Tube you. Yeah, tube you. There you go. It's just reversed. Instead of YouTube, it's tube you. And we're active. We have activated
Clean up your room.
the tube views. There we go. They now have sight and sound. Allow them to have a little bit of this. Yeah. It's the Serfs show with Lance and friends. You guys all enjoy your friends. You talk about the GOP cope from yesterday's election. I'm going to be covering that today on this show. So since you're here, you're going to get all of the copium. That's right. Apparently, the right think that abortions are sexy. Yeah, something that I wouldn't say. You know, I think they can be a very traumatic event for women and people who give birth. But at the end of the day, the right are the ones now saying that apparently abortions are sexy. And they can't win when abortions are considered so goddamn sexy. Yeah, so that's a weird thing for them to be saying, but we're going to be enjoying their copium. I could use some copium, to be honest. It fucking sucks because, you know, like most people who oppose ethnic cleansing, you're probably disgusted by both the Democrats and the Republicans. And yesterday in that very, very positive election in terms of, you know, a lot of people gaining a lot of bodily autonomy, if Ohio suddenly votes to basically allow for the legal access of abortion, which they did, not to mention weed, the two things you really want to win elections for. You know what we should do? We should have a ceasefire / end all arms sales to Israel omnibus bill. And then we need to add the most popular, apparently, electoral policies, which happens to be giving half the population bodily autonomy, which I guess does play pretty well, and also that weed, son. So there you have it. And then add some other stuff that you know, let's also tack on a couple riders to that bill, you know, so that it is a thing. I don't talk a lot in chat because I watch and multitask, but I know I love you. I have to watch and multitask too, because now since we can simul stream and we're streaming on the YouTubes, and the YouTube numbers are turning this show into a massive success, it also means I have to jump around and keep my eyeballs glued to all corners of the internet. But don't worry, I see you. Hola, Jose Campos. ¿Cómo estás? My dogs are goth. Hi. Go Docs 11. Yo. Tyler Hackner. Hey. Twitch chat. How you doing? Looking sexy over there. Zivanari. Hi. Randomino 5. Jessa 1312. Good to see all of you. Of course, the mods fabulosos. Fabuli. Political puppy. Here. Modding. Winston in the Serfs TV chat, along with Topper, Leo Fee, Anarcho Communist. Lots of great people all over the corners of the internet, all here to hang out. And yes, we're going to be enjoying some sweet copium. I do love some copium. It really sucks because we're also going to be talking about how Rashida Tlaib just became the only Palestinian American lawmaker to be censored. And I believe one of the first politicians to be censored since someone tried to propose the abolition of slavery. That's the last time this happened. I was trying to look up research on that, and of course, yes, someone did bring forward, I believe, I can't remember the exact date, obviously the abolition of slavery, and was censored for speaking about such, but I don't think, was that the last time? Is there nothing in between those two events? Because I couldn't look up, I couldn't find evidence of other people being censored for other reasons, but just cowardly, horrifying shit of the highest order. We did it here in Canada. I got nothing to fucking brag about. We did it at Sarah Jama. You know, the NDP did it at the Sarah Jama, and now it's happening to Rashida Tlaib, and it's fucking disgusting. As is the 22 Democrats. It was a bipartisan fucking achievement. 22 Democrats joining in. Fucking disgusting as cowards. Don't worry, we will be naming names, and if possible, they should be primaried. Fuck that noise. You know, it's absolutely disgusting. If that is true, by the way, I can't verify that 100%, but if that is true, that the last time someone was censured in the House for proposing the abolition of slavery, then Rashida is in great company. Great. History is going to remember you fantastically, and fucking hell will it ever look horrifyingly upon people who stood by while thousands of children were being slaughtered. Just absolutely disgusting. If you happen to be and I should preface this by saying thank you so much for supporting the stream, a supporter of the Patreon, or you subscribe on Twitch or other places, I'm going to be releasing the brand new Mind Explosions that goes into what is the difference between a ceasefire and a humanitarian pause, and why are so many politicians just incredibly afraid of a humanitarian pause. If you want Patreon access content for subbing, it's going to be posted in the Discord in the super secret section. If you are on the Serfs.tv, I'm currently working on a mechanism to give it to you, but I think we've almost got that. So I'll make sure to have it up to you, everybody who's already subscribed for the show early. Then it's going to be free for everybody because I just put everything out for free eventually. And then Kyle's working on getting subs and emotes active in the YouTube now, since a lot of people watch on YouTube. So we want everyone to have access to, little thingies. And on that note, let me thank everybody who has been subscribing so far. Wolfhard1136, 18 months, left his bust, 18 months, wow. Yif exclamation mark, or Yif exclamation mark. Thank you very much for the Prime, brand new subby, everyone be cozy. And Quiet185, thanks again for gifting a tier 1 sub to Franken Panty. Very, very kind of you. And in that note, I suppose I should start covering the world. Chico doesn't want to be here. Apparently I'm too noisy. So, yeah, there's that whole thing.
Dateline 2023. The world is ravaged by a plague. No, we're not talking about the Rona. We're talking about the capitalistic death cult that values profits over the long-term health of humanity. What can be done to stop them and save the future of civilization? Find out only on Hard News.
Some like the news. We like it hard. Ba-bam. Hey, give me a sec. It's just not the same when Chico leaves, you know? Just want him coiled in the corner like a cute little croissant witch. Just gonna have to deal with it. Oh, and if you are a gamer and you wanted to see my coverage of how shitty Konami is and The Escapist, we did that yesterday, so you can just rewind the VODs and do that. All right. If you didn't know, in Canada, a neo-Nazi serial killer murdered 4 indigenous women, and some of their bodies' remains are believed to be in a landfill. There is a huge controversy in this country related to searching said landfill in order to give people the dignity of having their bodies able to have, ceremonial procedures to allow them to pass. And that, unfortunately, is something that is seen as too expensive. That could have something to do with the fact that they are indigenous. However, that trial is now underway and he's pled not guilty.
First day of a 2-week-long pre-trial for Jeremy Skibicki, who faces 4 counts of first-degree murder charges in connection with the death of Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, and Morgan Harris, as well as a 4th unidentified woman referred to as Buffalo Woman. In a packed courtroom today, Skibicki pleaded not guilty to all 4 counts. With permission of the court, families of the victims were able to begin the day with a smudge, song, and a prayer, with ceremonial items blessing the courtroom. And on Sunday night, the family of Mercedes Myron gathered.
Paul Gosar got censored for that Attack on Titan AOC video. Okay. So then whoever said that it hasn't happened since abolition was incorrect.
Gathered outside the courthouse for a candlelight vigil to prepare for the difficult weeks ahead.
Very emotional. Me and my family are here with heavy hearts. This weekend, this month is going to be very hard on us. I can't thank the community enough for coming out time and time again.
The remains of Contois were found in the Brady landfill last year, and it's believed the remains of Harris and Myron are buried in the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg. A search of the landfill has not yet been scheduled. The rest of this pre-trial will be under a publication ban. Skibicki's trial is set for April 2024. Tamara Pimentel.
Yeah, that's the Wikipedia I was reading, by the way, about Charles Sumner. But yeah, that's where I was like, oh, okay, so that part is true. The part that no one's had, who's been censored since, is not true. That's the part that's false. And if you don't know, here's some protests of the anger over the landfill not being searched for the rest of the remains.
Families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls refuse to be ignored.
And I'm going to continue playing my drum and singing for my beautiful niece, Tanya Jane Pinak. She don't belong in a dump.
They took their message directly to premiers to get on their agenda.
We're not trash!
calling for landfills to be searched for the remains of their loved ones, like Cambria Harris's mother.
Search the damn landfills. I shouldn't have had to come here in the first place.
The issue brought to the forefront as premiers met with Indigenous leaders in Winnipeg.
Our women deserve more. We don't belong. We're not garbage.
As a mother, my heart goes out to those individuals who have lost a loved one. And I can tell you that, but I'm also the premier. And we have to make what is very, very difficult decisions.
Manitoba's premier seemed to be moved, but was unswayed.
We cannot ignore.
That's a really good way of putting it, eh? Moved, but not swayed. Moved, though. Certainly moved. Definitely going to say, well, I understand. That sounds sad. That's saddy to me.
Or the complexity of the issue and the objective viability of other considerations, things like toxic and hazardous waste that are in the landfill.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women, just one issue raised with premiers Monday, ahead of 2 more days of meetings for provincial.
I mean, I'm pleased to announce since this, she has since been outed, and the first Indigenous premier of Manitoba is now in power there, and he has said that he is going to be making this a priority. We still haven't seen a direct update on this, but yeah, and also the Conservatives tried to make this a key part of their campaign, which was just one of the most disgusting things you could make, being like, say no to the landfill search, save money by not giving people human dignity. Yeah, the Conservatives.
And territorial leaders, where affordability and new clean fuel regulations are top of the agenda.
Atlantic Canada has been disproportionately impacted by these regulations. We don't think that's fair as a province, PEI, and as a region.
As for affordable housing,
it's the number one issue for us. Housing has been a core issue for many decades in the north.
Healthcare is always an issue at these meetings, but after the federal.
So that's the latest. I sincerely hope that, I don't think he will be found innocent, obviously, because there's pretty much an unbelievable amount of evidence that this fucking neo-Nazi piece of shit did this disgusting stuff, but yeah. Also, I want to talk a little about hate crimes. Yes, hate crimes are fucking disgusting, and you should condemn them. And guess what? We have, right now, horrifying hate crimes in Canada. Yes, we have Islamophobic hate crimes, and we have anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish hate crimes. We have a horrifying hate crime of Jewish people taking place in Montreal, where Jewish establishments were firebombed simply because they were Jewish. Now, that one is still being investigated, so I can't conclusively say whether it's that the exact reason why it happened, but that shit is fucking horrifying and should be called out for what it is. Fuck any racist piece of shit who's targeting people specifically because they're Jewish. That's absolute fucking garbage, and you are garbage human beings. That's all there is to say about hate crimes. But it seems like the Calgary police have seen fit to charge someone for saying from the river to the sea. Yes, and they are going to be laying them with a hate crime. Here is exactly the rationale. This was the leader of a Free Palestine protest and an organizer of it. Following the protest on Sunday, November 5th, 2023, after consultation with the CPS hate crime coordinator, one man has been charged with causing a disturbance and a hate motivation that has been applied to the charge. Ahead of the protest, our diversity resource team and our public safety unit met with members of both groups involved in the protest to ensure the safety of the participants, the public, and our police officers, and to discuss some of the language and signage observed at the past protest. During the protest, a man took the stage to speak to a large crowd in attendance through amplification using technology. Yes, they actually were able to capture his voice into a device, which then used electricity to magnify the voice to multiple people, similar to what's happening right now. And a public address system, he acknowledged this conversation with police. He then proceeded to repeatedly use an anti-Semitic phrase while encouraging the crowd to follow along. The anti-Semitic phrase in question here was from the river to the sea. Hate speech, as defined in the criminal code, is complex, and several contextual factors must be considered before charges can be laid. We work closely with the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service to review any potential hate crime behavior at the protest to determine if those thresholds had been met. We will continue to police behaviors, not beliefs. Behaviors, not beliefs. Remember that. And this entire discourse, by the way, which I haven't really been trying to participate in because I think what's way more important is bringing people to the attention that right now over 4,000 children have been killed in Gaza, and the situation is fucking horrifying. It is a mass murder event taking place, and it is funded by our tax dollars. That's what deserves a lot of your attention. That's what deserves your time. That's what deserves your power if you happen to be a social media influencer online, not doing this thing where you're constantly going after people for using phrases and terms and words and all that kind of stuff. Who just rated? Oh, the majority report. Frenzies. Hello, Frenzies. It's very good to see you here. You have filled my heart with joy. I swell. I'm schwelling. Yes, exactly. There you go. Old references. Those are references to old things. You might remember Austin Powers. Hey, yeah. Hey everybody, welcome. If it's your first time here, my name is Lance. I host the news from a dumpster fire-esque perspective, and we're covering the news of the world. It's not just news from America. It's not just news from Canada. It's global news. Although right now I am talking about a story in Canada. If you haven't heard about it, right now in Canada, a person who organized a Free Palestine rally has been charged with a hate crime for saying from the river to the sea. Just wanted to quickly bring attention to that. If you didn't know, the Calgary police have said that he used a voice amplification device, not unsimilar to the one I'm using right now to speak. Yes, but this is what the Calgary police are going after, which is kind of really fucked considering that there is actual real anti-Semitism going on in this country, and there is anti-Jewish hate that is taking place, and there are fucking horrifying racist-ass hate crimes that are taking place in this country, such as the firebombing of Jewish institutions in Montreal. That's fucking disgusting-ass racism right there. That should be fucking charged with a hate crime. There's also like multiple stories. You can look at the one of a Jewish woman who was attacked at a subway in Toronto by a goddamn neo-Nazi who did a Hitler salute afterwards, because most of these motherfuckers aren't subtle about their shit. They're not sitting in the fucking, you know, in the middle of nowhere being like, I'm about to use some dog whistles, tee-hee, and then doing shit like that. They're just straight up ass racists who hate Jewish people, so fuck those motherfuckers. But this is scary. This is like, hey, if you go to a pro-Palestinian protest and you do a chant from the river to the sea, well, you could be charged with a hate crime now. The precedent hath been set, so fuck. This is the world we live in. But hey, can everyone go to twitch.tv/the majority report, give them a follow back, go give them some love. Obviously, you know, there's probably your pre-show to this show, so hopefully you've all had some fun half, because we're gonna be going for some rancid half right now, but then we will get into fun half. We'll do fun stuff as well, in addition to everything else. I did have a little video that kind of explains a little bit about this. Because we're going to also be talking about the fact that Rashida Tlaib just got censored for the same thing. Oh, I do want to bring attention to one quick thing about the Canadian national anthem that some people might not know about if you're about to condemn or, you know, anthems and nationalistic songs. Let's look at the original national anthem, Canada. It's Oh Canada. I know you know that. You've seen it on Ren and Stimpy before. Canada anthem lyrics. You might not know the original version of the song though. Let's see. I can pull up the classic, the original Canadian anthem. Not the On Guard for Thee one. Unstolen native land. But they make you sing it every single time you go to sea to sea. Let's do that. Here we are. The versions. Prosper in Canada. God save the king. God save the king. God save the king. Man, there's a lot of God save the kings here. Really got to save that king. He needs saving. Let's see. Hold on. Sorry, I got so many things. Canada's anthem, all 4 verses. Britannica has it. French lyrics. I had this open yesterday, and now there's so many versions of this. Now, sorry, I've got all these French versions right now. Well, this one's a little refrain. Help us find, oh God. Jesus, how many versions of the anthem have we had? Original lyrics. O Canada, where the pines and maples grow, great prairies spread and lordly rivers flow, how dear to us our broad domain, from east to western sea, thou land of hope for all who toil, thou true north, strong and free refrain. O Canada, beneath thy shining skies, may stalwart sons and gentle maidens rise. Gentle maidens, ooh, sexy. To keep thee steadfast through the years, from east to western sea, our own beloved native land, our true north, strong and free. So I want to point this out again. From east to western sea, our own beloved native land, our true north, strong and free. Is that calling for the genocide of indigenous people? And if so, when people sing the national anthem, or parts of the national anthem, or variations of the national anthem at every single hockey game, is that them then saying that they want to endorse the genocide of native people? And if you're like, well, come on, this shit is old. It's a long time ago. People have brought this up and they use it for different... Do you know what the lyrics are to America the Beautiful? Did you know what some of those lyrics include? Did you know what some of the lines are when they talk about from sea to shining sea? What does that mean as well? Is that them again celebrating the elimination of indigenous peoples from their land?
Wait, did you hear that? That chant for Palestinian freedom is being criminalized by some European governments. Police in Austria banned a demonstration because they said the chant is incitement to violence. The UK's Interior Minister even said that it's a call for the destruction of Israel. And in 2018, Mark Lamont Hill was fired by CNN because he dared to say this at the UN.
A free Palestine, from the river to the sea.
So what does freedom from the river to the sea actually mean? And do these people really want to wipe Israelis off the map? Okay, first let's break down the chant. The river they're talking about is this, the River Jordan. And the sea, that's the Mediterranean. In between those two bodies of water, 7 million Palestinians live under Israeli rule. The whole of that land used to be historic Palestine, and now all of that territory is controlled by Israel. Actually, we get some unexpected help explaining this from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who said this in 2010.
As long as in this territory west of the Jordan River, there is only one political entity called Israel, it is going to be either non-Jewish or non-democratic. If this block of millions of Palestinians cannot vote, that will be an apartheid state.
There are around 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and around 2.3 million in the Gaza Strip. In both of those areas, Palestinians can't vote in the state that rules their lives. Israel rules over them under a military occupation. That means the Israeli army controls almost every aspect of their lives, banning them from accessing their land, forcibly evicting them from their homes, telling them when and where they can travel. Sometimes they're not even allowed to visit a neighboring town. And there are around another 1.6 million Palestinians living in what is now Israel. Although many of them have Israeli passports and they can vote, they don't have equal rights. Palestinians living in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel all live under a system of apartheid, according to Israeli and international human rights organizations and UN experts. That means they live under a system that discriminates against them just because they were born Palestinian. The people forcibly evicted from this land to make way for the state of Israel. What Ehud Barak was saying was that the Zionist project of a state of Jewish supremacy that rules all of the land between the river and the sea can never be a democracy. Why? Because if in the apartheid state that Israel has created, those 7 million Palestinians living under Israeli rule got equal rights and votes, well then Israel's Jewish supremacist system would be democratically ended. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is not an attack on Jews. It's an attack on apartheid. It's a demand for equality, to give Palestinians their basic human rights wherever they live, in that chunk of Israeli-controlled territory that lies between the river and the sea.
There's a much more in-depth article in Al Jazeera about the history of the word, how it's been used, and yes, like any other term or slogan, how it's been used by various different groups throughout time. It's similar to how a lot of people in the West were saying the line Slava Ukraini for a very long time, and then other people were pointing out, well, that actually was used by people who were directly associated with, you know, far-right movements at one point, and then other people have been now reappropriating it to mean something else. A.V. Lewis says, history lesson to the Calgary police. Below are the first words of the Likud's founding platform, 1977. So Palestinians want to, quote, be free from the river to the sea. Zionists wanted, quote, exclusive sovereignty from the river to the sea. They got it. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable and is linked with the right to security and peace. Therefore, Judea and Samaria will not be handed to any foreign administration. Between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. Les Français, the Québécois, the French, the Bloc, the leading, sometimes major political party in Quebec, the separatists, you might know them as, have now joined calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So, in this case, I will say, très bien. Très bien. Merci. Très bien. And that makes every single major political party, the Greens, the NDP, and the Bloc, currently, who aren't in direct, well, I guess the NDP do have some power, but either way, outside of the Liberals and the Conservatives, every major political party in Canada is now calling for a ceasefire. So that leaves the Liberals and Conservatives. Some Liberals have. There's a couple breaks in the ranks, but overall, right now, the party that is unanimously not calling for one is the Conservatives of Canada. Otherwise, it's the Liberals and the Conservatives who haven't directly called for a ceasefire. And yeah, this is one of the reasons why I keep saying, please continue to write into your politicians, continue to pressure your politicians. This is something in which the overwhelming majority of both Canadians and Americans are not supporting the current conflict insofar as it's being sold to you by Western leaders. It's not popular. People are tired of it. So again, continue to write in. !Free Palestine will have links so you can write into your American or Canadian politicians. There's also ways to do so in Europe, to ask your European politicians to do the same. All countries that are directly funding the Israeli military machine are complicit and need to stop. So continue, please write it in. Yes, it's the bare minimum, but still, this does put pressure in the sense that now there is, again, the NDP, the Bloc, and the Greens have all called for a ceasefire. And yes, you could make the argument that a lot of them don't hold power, although the NDP are the ones propping up the Liberal government in Canada, which leaves us to, again, two major parties left. And who's going to be the last one standing by while this stuff happens?
It is therefore very concerning that the King's speech did not include a commitment to securing a ceasefire of both sides in Gaza and the release of all hostages, along with the condemnation of war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is not an abstract point. This is a live issue.
Oh, and if you're here from the Majority Report, and any of you are just watching me and you haven't watched the Majority Report, right now, Sam and Emma's coverage and interviews that they've been doing have been sensational, on point. They are my podcast must listen to in the afternoons when I'm walking Chico. I highly recommend them. They're interviewing so many good people right now, especially academics who know so much about this. And even if you think you already know a lot about this topic, it has been nonstop enlightening to continuously hear people just give you more and more history, more and more backgrounds from all varieties of academia, right? From Muslim scholars to Jewish scholars, all speaking about this with such incredible breadth and depth. I would highly recommend listening to them if you've been missing out.
The situation is urgent. Figures from Gaza indicate that over 10,000 Palestinian civilians have now died. Over 10,000 in just 30 days, almost half of whom are children. According to Save the Children, the number of Palestinian children killed in Gaza by last week's figures already has surpassed the annual number of children killed across the world's conflict zones since 2019. Gaza, in the words of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, is becoming a graveyard for children. It is beyond unacceptable that children are paying the ultimate price amidst the failure of political leaders in the US, in the UK and Europe to call for an immediate ceasefire and oppose violations of international law. Every hour, every day, the number of deaths get higher and higher. And the reports and images of the impact of the military bombardment on refugee camps, on hospitals, on schools are simply horrifying. Nothing Nothing can justify these crimes against humanity that we are witnessing in real time. So can the government confirm why they seem to understand that killing thousands of children in response to the horrific killings and hostage-taking that included children on the 7th of October is either moral or in keeping with international law? Can the government clarify why it supports the collective punishment and killing of innocent civilians as a legitimate response to the killing of innocent civilians?
Gotta take
Can the government confirm whether any weapons traded from the UK has been used to kill any children or civilians?
Same with Canada. All right. Palate cleanse before we do a little copium.
Please, Mr. Taylor, won't you let my kids go free? Please, Mr. Taylor, won't you let my kids go free?
Pretty well done. I'm going to keep playing it, but I want to answer your question. Do we have an official number? So CBS reports that coming out of the IDF, they have confirmed that they have so far taken out 60 key Hamas individuals. What is key about them, that hasn't been clarified, but 60. So that would put over 10,000 people, an estimated 9,000, I believe, 400 plus are civilians, in exchange for 60 is the current exchange rate, if you view it that way.
They don't belong in prison.
Yeah. Damn, Lumi Roo. I just got 2 incredible raids back to back. Well, hello Raiders. Everybody here, can you go to twitch.tv/LumiRoo, go give them a follow back. Welcome in. We're about to start a copium stream, so don't worry. I'm not going to be showing you horrifying war footage. If that's something you don't want to watch, we're going to be laughing at Republicans melting down at the fact that Ohio is having an arc. Is it ever? I'm so here for the Ohio comeback story. It's fantastic. Legalized weed, providing safe access to abortions for half the population and people who give birth as well. It's fantastic. It's awesome. And a lot of people are super, super upset. The worst people in the world are mad. So as Lumi is saying, we love it. We do love it. There's not a lot of good news coming out of the world right now. It's a depressing place, and knowing that you and your governments are most likely complicit in some fucking horrifying war crimes can bring anyone down. So we need a little copium just to you know, even things out a bit. But yeah, can everyone go to twitch.tv/LumiRoo, go give them a follow back. Thank you so much.
They're guilty as can be, but the only crime they're guilty of is simply loving me. Please, Mr. Taylor, won't you let my kids go free?
I'm a judge, not a jailer.
Please, Mr. Taylor, won't you let my kids go free? You can keep the vodka. Please, Mr. Taylor, won't you let this children free?
Oh. Judge has denied a motion from Trump's attorney to block Ivanka Trump about being asked about the emails between her and her husband, Jared Kushner. Ooh, that's not good.
My beautiful kids, no.
I should have worn makeup.
Let my sons go free.
If you did enjoy that song, it's by Maestro Zikos. Maestro Zikos. I'm just going to share the musicians' links, and we can get into election night.
We're going to begin with the election results across the country and what they could mean for 2024. Kentucky's Democratic governor won a closely watched race in a heavily Republican state.
And Ohio possibly delivering a message with national implications, approving a measure protecting abortion rights. Mary Bruce is in Columbus, Ohio, with the latest on that and the key races. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Robin. Yeah, this was a huge night for Democrats, scoring big wins in several races, proving the political potency of the fight for abortion and giving the party a big boost with the presidential election now just a year away.
By the way, there has been a definitive rebuke of the idea of regressing back to the old medieval times when it comes to, hey, by the way, we should be taking away the bodily autonomy of half the population of the good old US of A. This seems to be something that is obviously driving out voters, and despite that, a lot of the pundits are still pressuring this as an issue, and people are melting down in real time. The same thing can be said, by the way, about running anti-trans campaigns. Anti-trans campaigns are incredibly expensive, they cost a lot of money, and they do not drive voters. Now, that doesn't change pundits telling you over and over and over, because a lot of it has to do with what they make their money on, that this is a key issue that Americans should be concerned about. You know, how they police and control the lives of like 0.7% of the population. Yeah, that is a very expensive thing to do. They keep doing it, and it keeps failing. Yesterday was yet another example of that. That's not changing baddies like Matt Walsh from saying things like this. 5 years ago, lots of people on the right assured me that the trans issue was a political loser. We proved them wrong. Now nearly all these same people are assuring me that the abortion issue is a political loser. I'm sensing a pattern. And yeah, I am too. It seems like these are things that get people inspired and driving voters out. And by the way, we should add, Danica Rome's race is being called for. She will become Virginia's first trans senator. She was very hard fought. It was a very hard fought race where hecklers openly shouted transphobic slurs at her in town halls. Anti-trans politics does not win elections. Congratulations to Senator Rome.
Overnight, Democrats on a winning streak, scoring victories in Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia, powered by support for abortion rights. In Ohio, voters enshrining a right to abortion access in the state's constitution. It's the 7th straight victory for abortion rights in a state referendum since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year.
Abortion access is the law of the land in Ohio.
Hell yeah.
The 14-point win in the red-leaning state, a strong sign for Democrats that abortion is the issue energizing the party's base. How important is the issue of abortion?
I think it's #1 on the ballot right now.
Women's rights are under attack. The big question now, will this momentum translate to an unpopular President Biden? In deep red Kentucky, Trump-backed candidate Republican Daniel Cameron tried to take down Democratic Governor Andy Beshear by linking him to Biden, but it didn't work.
Thank you, Kentucky!
Beshear carved out his own brand as a popular bipartisan problem solver and ran against Kentucky's total ban on abortion, winning even as Republicans swept every other statewide office.
Kentucky made a choice. A choice not to move to the right or to the left, but to move forward for every single family.
Twirling towards freedom?
In Virginia, the Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin tried to stake out middle ground on abortion, promising if Republicans won the state legislature, they'd pass what he called reasonable restrictions, 15-week abortion ban with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. But it backfired.
By the way, I'm absolutely reviled at the actual concept where it's like, oh, we're going to make exceptions. We're going to make exceptions. I mean, I guess if you were raped, then yeah, there should be an exception for that, right? Because like you weren't choosing to get pregnant. I mean, even if you were not choosing to get pregnant, but you got pregnant, well, then maybe you shouldn't have access to that. And then there's people who go even ghoulish, like even worse than that, where it's like, well, yeah, we can't make any exceptions. I'm sorry. Life is just too sacred, except for the fact that after you're born, we don't give two fucks about your life. But like, you know, pre-life is so sacred that, again, we should remove all of your bodily autonomy in this matter.
People have become what Virginia spoke.
Democrats not only holding on to the state Senate, but retaking the House of Delegates, too. And where abortion was not an issue, Republicans easily won. In Mississippi, Republican Governor Tate Reeves winning re-election, his opponent Brandon Presley underperforming there. And guys, in Philadelphia, this
U.S. voters are learning how important state and local elections are to them now after sweeping attempts to restrict their rights over the past few years. Yes, and that's good, by the way. Local elections is something I stress all the time. Local elections are incredibly important. Get involved, get active, especially if you happen to be a leftist, because you have a much higher chance of winning in smaller and local elections because no one fucking turns out. It's like, oh, yes, I have no idea who the comptroller is or who's on the school board or anything. I don't know. I hope they're good people. I hope so. Our voter turnout is something between 15 and 35% at any given time, and so that's that. Get fucking mobilized.
This morning, history is being made. Sherelle Parker, now the city's first female mayor, George.
Hi, everyone.
So obviously those are some pretty big victories.
Democrats scoring big at the polls, driven by the battle over abortion rights.
And we've been telling you that Democrats in Virginia took control of both houses of legislature here in the Commonwealth. And ABC's Liz Landers is in D.C. with a recap.
Voters in at least 37 states took to the polls for Election Day Tuesday. And the big takeaway, abortion access remains a top issue for voters, with Ohio enshrining abortion protections in the state constitution. The state becoming the 7th to protect abortion access through the ballot box since the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade in 2022.
And a unifying theme around abortion rights and the way that voters are reacting to it and responding to it that continues to reflect badly on the Republican Party.
And doctors in that state sighing in collective relief.
Doctors will now be able to provide abortion care, contraception care, miscarriage managed, in vitro fertilization, all of that, because now it's in our Constitution.
Another state where abortion access played a factor, Virginia, where Democrats won control of both legislative chambers, flipping the House of Delegates and maintaining control of the state Senate.
Hold the House, flip the Senate.
The results were a rebuke to GOP Governor Glenn Youngkin, who campaigned heavily for Republicans who promised to pass a 15-week abortion ban with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. In solidly Republican Kentucky, Democratic Governor Andy Beshear won re-election while attacking his state's no exemptions abortion ban as extreme. The lone bright spot for Republicans?
This victory sure is sweet.
In the Deep South, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves clinched re-election, beating out Elvis Presley's second cousin.
We all now know what it means in a state like Mississippi when you stand up to the national liberals.
And there were a few firsts in Tuesday night's elections. Philadelphia has elected their first female mayor, and the Virginia House of Delegates has elected their first ever black speaker. In Washington, Liz Landers, ABC News.
Oh, yeah.
Issue in particular. And so much so that even Sean Hannity realizes it.
And this is what happens when you go for 50 years. An unelected group of Supreme Court justices take this vitally important issue out of voters' hands and make the, rule by fiat in Washington. And then when we, thankfully get it returned to the states and returned to voters, it's a difficult issue, and we're working through it. This is the third election. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to be awkward. And
yeah, I mean, it's just hard for people to learn that they just don't deserve to have bodily autonomy. And I mean, they're just like, they don't know what's good for them. They don't know what's good for them. For some reason, they keep just fighting back and choosing not to be controlled by, the state in that regard. But, we just got to keep telling them over and over and over, you don't know what's good for you.
Everybody's kind of got to try to find their voice on it. Democrats demagogue the issue to very effectively.
They're trying to scare, Democrats are trying to scare women into thinking Republicans don't want abortion legal under any circumstances. And I go back.
We're not inhumane monsters, okay? Like, look, women, people who give birth, all of y'all, at the end of the day, you should have a crumb of bodily autonomy in certain conditions, all right? We've said already that we can make exceptions for rape, and even that is probably going to be something that is disputed state by state about whether or not they're going to allow that. But that's good, right? You see? Yeah, I mean, you do have access to health care if you were raped. That's what we propose. Why isn't that enough? I don't get it.
To Pennsylvania 2022, the Republican candidate for governor, if I remember correctly, no exceptions for rape, incest, or the mother's life, and lost to a non-incumbent gubernatorial candidate, Democratic candidate, by a margin.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to see if I just understand what Sean Hannity's saying. Democrats want people to believe that Republicans don't want to allow abortions in any circumstance, and then he immediately pivots to talk about a Republican candidate who did not want to allow abortions in any circumstance. I mean, it is the case that Republicans don't want abortions to exist in any circumstance. In fact, we talked about.
Yeah. Have you heard Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham talk about this? Oh heavens, no, women haven't had any decisions on what they do with their disgusting bodies.
Yesterday, how the speaker of the Republican Speaker of the House voted against voted against birth control. And so it goes further than that. Now, it's true that in certain circumstances, they try and finesse this to see if there's some magic formula where they can take away an individual right from half of the population, roughly, and and arguably everyone, right? I mean, because couples often make this decision together, but they finesse it so that they can take away parts of that right, and now they're whining because their position is completely unpopular with the American people. And I love how it was 50 years of fiat, and then it was it's no longer fiat. That you can overturn a 50-year precedent. I mean, if you want to talk about something that is definition of fiat, it is a judiciary that has no respect for settled precedent. But continue.
And I go back to Pennsylvania 2022, the Republican candidate for governor,
just based on this guy's long, dead-eyed stare, I feel like he's trying to control both of them with his mind or something.
If I remember correctly, no exceptions for rape, incest, or the mother's life, and lost to a non-incumbent gubernatorial candidate, Democratic candidate, by a margin that was not seen since the 1940s. So I have to believe that is an indication that the women in America, suburban moms, want it probably legal and rare and probably earlier than,
Silly suburban mums wanting bodily autonomy. Yeah, what, in between two wine Chardonnays, I believe.
Oh, at the point of viability.
At the point of viability.
I think just about everybody believes that it should be slightly earlier than the point of viability. I mean, I think that's in fact what the standing law was.
I think the doctors are on that.
We should also talk about, yes, thank you for this link, because you know who had a bad night yesterday? The worst human beings on the fucking planet. Moms for Liberty, the anti-LGBTQ plus hate organization. In a night full of MAGA losses, perhaps no group suffered more losses than Moms for Liberty. By the way, the pro-Hitler group. The controversial pro-Trump group, which and I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler here, I'm saying that they actually post quotes of Hitler in their newsletters. And then when people are like, hey, you know who that is? That's Adolf Hitler. They'll be like, oh, well, we're not endorsing, obviously the Fuhrer or anything. We're just simply saying that this quote in and of itself, just by itself, is kind of accurate to describing what our feelings and sentiments are, done again by the leader of the Nazi Party of Germany. But we're not a pro-Hitler group, just so you all know, right? Which faced resounding defeats in 5 out of 6 states where their candidates contested. That is fucking beautiful. Reject hate, reject fucking bigotry, reject fucking Nazi lovers. They were absolutely clobbered in Pennsylvania, where all 5 of their candidates running on a platform of banning educational books related to slavery and LGBTQ plus inclusion were decisively beaten by Democratic contenders. Virginia witnessed an even more significant defeat, with 3 Moms for Liberty school board candidates losing by substantial margins. Iowa saw a staggering 9 Moms for Liberty candidates losing their races after accusing local school districts of disseminating pornography for children for featuring books that discussed LGBTQ plus acceptance. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, all 4 Moms for Liberty candidates were overwhelmed by their Democratic opponents. North Carolina also experienced a setback as their rural candidates suffered a decisive defeat. These results highlight the voters' rejection of Moms for Liberty values and raise questions about the popularity of their positions, particularly those related to educational materials and LGBTQ plus issues. You know the shit that Tim Pool is always fucking pushing? Like when Emma Vigeland went on Tim Pool's show, and then he was like, so you support giving pornography to kids? And she's like, no, I don't. Well, do you think this book should be banned? And then it's always that gotcha, because in this book there's an actual cartoon depiction of fellatio. That's right. It's in the book. There's an actual drawing of someone filleting another human being. And then, having read the book, it's actually the coming-of-age story about an asexual person and how they've, come to learn about their own asexuality. And that's what that book is about. And in that scene in question, it's actually a plastic strap-on phallus that is being used. And if you want to contest that, hey, perhaps this book isn't appropriate for kids, that's one discussion. Saying that, hey, by the way, the very existence of this book denotes that you want to give pornography to children is completely absurd. And then trying to use that as a wedge issue is simply because you're trying to hide the fact that you happen to have a lot of deep-seated, I don't know, fucked up shit that you're trying to unpack, and that you think that any single discussion of anything related to LGBTQ plus matters, including asexuality, happens to be inherently by itself sexual, and trying to pass on sexual teachings to others. That's basically where the whole thing goes. All right, hold on. Papa Casey, thank you very much for the tier 1. Appreciate you, everyone. Be cozy, new subby. Reddish 5, thanks as well for the sub. Appreciate you too. Thank you so much. And shout out to the Majority Report and Lumi Roo for the raids. Go check out their channels. These results highlight the voters' rejection of Mum for Liberty values and raise questions about the popularity of their positions, particularly those related to educational materials and LGBTQ plus issues. And it's even more likely that voters are starting to signal their fatigue with Trump-aligned candidates, which is fucking beautiful. Beautiful. You do love to see it. A rebuke and rejection of these fucking Nazi-esque or Nazi-associated or Nazi-tiered fucking assholes who are constantly trying to use wedge issues to go against marginalized communities. Fuck them. Fuck them. And honestly, it's amazing to see that this shit is just not working. No one cares about your weird ass sexual hangups and medieval beliefs and you trying to push those on the rest of the world. Everyone is so fucking sick and tired of it. The Speaker of the House is the biggest fucking freak ass weirdo who should be fucking vilified and mocked relentlessly. His wife ran a website that compares people having consensual sex with each other, equates them to bestiality. That shit is fucked up. You shouldn't be lecturing people on sexual morality. Your hard drives should be searched, you know? This shit is fucked. And stop letting them get away with this. Stop sitting by when someone's like, well, we care deeply about depravity. We care about all the sexual immorality of the gays. We want to make sure that the gays no longer can really operate in society like the rest of us because they're depraved. They're depraved. By the way, did you know that me and my son monitor each other's porn history searches? Yeah, we have an app. It's the Covenant Eyes app. It actually tracks all of your activity on your phone or computer and then tells you and sends you, if you happen to have a partnership with someone else, all of that information. And now you can also choose on the Covenant app to have it blurred out by default if you don't want to have to actually look at all the sinful, tantalizing behavior. But if you want to, you can also select to unblur that to make sure it wasn't something caught by mistake. And this one time while I was monitoring my son's porn history, I actually thought was 2 women in a porn scene, but luckily because I actually used the app, I was able to see that it was just a picture of 2 women talking. So I'm very proud to say that my son was not in fact gooning. And then he's now in fact doing the same thing to me to make sure that his own dad is not masturbating to any specific porn, and he'll have access to all the links and pictures if he so chooses, and then we can obviously keep each other in check. And that's how we do things in our family. We're the sexually immoral people, and we want to now condemn you for your vile consensual sex that you're having with each other that my wife compares to bestiality. That's the fucking, this is not even an exaggerated bit, by the way. This is not hyperbole. Go look it up. Go look it up. All that shit is fucking a matter of public record. That's the third in line for the presidency of the United States right now. These weird-ass Christian fascists who have so much fucked up sexual hang-ups, and they want to push it on the rest of the world. We're not here to police your fucking preferences or your kinks or your weird ass shit, unless of course you're endangering children, then fuck you. Yeah, you're a pedophile and you need to be fucking arrested for that shit. But hey, if you want to have consensual sex with other people, if you want to look up, diaper porn, diaper fetish porn, Matt Walsh, if that's your thing, we're not here to police that. We're not here to stop you from enjoying your diaper fetish porn or any of that kind of stuff. We're here to tell you to stop trying to police other people for enjoying consensual sex or not enjoying consensual sex with other people. If you happen to be an asexual person, you shouldn't be persecuted by these assholes either. Leave people the fuck alone. There's no one more obsessed with the sex life than strangers, than evangelical Christians, fundamentalist Catholics, all of these religious zealots who try to say that they're doing it because of the morality of the universe. No, you are just obsessed with what other people do in their privacy and their bedrooms. It's disgusting, and no one wants to take it anymore. And it's fucking great. It's absolutely great. I think that was one of the funny clips that I had from Majority Report. And now we have some Newsmax COPIUM.
and you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote. It was a...
One more time.
And you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot.
His words, not mine. Yeah, he's the one saying that.
And you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote. It was a secret sauce for disaster in Ohio. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's why I thank goodness that most of the states in this country don't allow you to put everything on the ballot, because
it's the frothy mix himself. That is Rick Santorum. Full of Santorum. Oh man, the man just devours Santorum. Can't get enough of that Santorum.
Right. Pure democracies are not the way to run a country.
So then you're...
And you put...
So pure democracies are not a way to run a country. Yeah. I would say usually say the quiet part out loud there, but I guess, you know, in the best of faith to the man who's got Santorum bleeding from the eyes, he's probably talking about specific policy measures. But I, for one, believe democracy is good and people should be able to vote on whether or not they should think something like the legalization and consumption of cannabis by adults is something that should be non-prohibited.
As far as, you know, it does seem like the Republican Party generally has a real problem with winning.
Even they know they're unpopular? Well, I don't know if you've been watching that little booger-eating fucking Nazi Nick Fuentes, but Nick Fuentes, I believe something like 5 or 6 months ago, was making an entire, well, no, not 5 or 6, whenever the last midterm election was, he got on his fucking high horse podium and was just going off about how the general public is not on board with a lot of the extremist policies of the far right. You know, things like access to abortion, you know, stuff like that. The anti-trans crusade that all of them have, and his deep anti-Semitism and hatred of Jewish people and wanting to spread Jewish conspiracy theories about them controlling all mass media and stuff. That is not popular, not popular in mainstream America. So he's been talking about that's why we need fascism. That's why we need a fascist leader. That's why we need a dictator. That's why we need someone who can come in there and teach all of these fucking degenerates and heathens, you know, what the one true path is. And obviously in his eyes, probably the one true path towards God, and checking out how much semen your roommates are expelling at any given time with a blacklight. That's what he wants, and that's a horrifying future. That's why you have to resist fascism.
You know, it certainly was in the midterms here and now in this one as well. And you wonder, do we have the right people in place to be putting the messaging together to the people that are supposed to be there to get the early vote out, to do these jobs? You wonder about the RNC. Do we have the right people running the show? Because we're not doing something right. I think that's very obvious.
Because you're all pushing horrifying policies that are not popular, and there's a problem, you see, and this problem has a little bit to do with capitalism, but we won't go full left on this one. But because your entire pundit class has found it's incredibly popular to talk nonstop about Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney, that's why Matt Walsh, that's why Tim Pool, that's why Steven Crowder, that's why the Quartering have so many fucking videos on a fucking beer, when it was like, it wasn't even like a month-long campaign, an ad campaign, it was one social media influencer post, and Bud Light, even fucking, you know, Anheuser-Busch ended up not supporting Dylan Mulvaney when she was going through the worst of all the fucking, you know, you basically put a target on Dylan Mulvaney's back and then just walked away, and then ever since then you've been like, wow, they're all still really mad about that, they're really angry about our one social media influencer post that we did. But because your pundits won't shut the fuck up about that, it's your pundits who are doing this nonstop, because your pundits have realized that they have created an obsession with trans people. If you look at Media Matters, like when they actually analyze how much trans like people are searched on in Facebook posts, both by the big influencers, yes, you could say that's because they have a lot more reach, such as the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, but on the other accounts, just random accounts who interact with them, they're right-wing. Right-wingers are more obsessed with trans people than trans people are. They're searching for them more than trans people are. They're talking about them more than trans people are. They are just like, they have trans people on the brain 24/7, because every single time they turn on Matt Walsh, what is he talking about? It's like, oh, Bud Light, the downfall of America is Bud Light. And all of them are like, yes, this is a real issue that concerns me. This is the greatest crisis of our time. I need to be obsessed with this 24/7. I should take a gun and go to drag queen story time hour, because apparently that's what I have to do to stop beer. or something. I don't know. I'm confused. But either way, I have to take up arms. I'm now going to do whatever Higher Right Check says and call in bomb threats to children's hospitals. Isn't that really fucked up and terrible to do that because there's dying kids? Doesn't matter. I've been told over and over and over, this is bad. Bud Light, Bud Light, Bud Light, Bud Light, Bud Light. Turns out, yeah, when it comes to elections and voting, that's not moving people in the same way, say, like taking away their bodily autonomy is. Like, that seems to really get people out to elections, to the voting booths, and get people really, really upset and mad, and galvanizes them. And so on one end, if you're like, so we're going to take away the bodily autonomy of half the population, and at the same time, we're going to say the biggest crises is the woke mind virus, CRT, and Bud Light. So those are, you know, get out there to the polls, everybody. Get out there to the polls and make your voice heard as we take away your bodily autonomy and tell you the crisis in America that you're facing is because of just nonsense, made up cartoons, you know? And that's not driving voters in the way they want.
Yeah, I think, Rob, I think you're right in a lot of places. I would say these state level races, RNC doesn't really play a role in voter turnout. That's run by the team on the ground, and that in Virginia is led by Glenn Youngkin, and he made an admirable effort to push more Republicans to get out earlier and vote, with the ultimate goal of having more people voting for Republican candidates. But it's not been enough.
As far as
not been enough, why aren't people doing the things we want? So obviously, yeah, I was watching the election coverage, and, you know, big shout out to Winston, who's one of the mods who's constantly really on the dial when it comes to saying, hey, by the way, we got Ohio. Ohio looks like it's going to be doing some pretty good things, stuff like that. Nonetheless, it is hard to become excited at a time like now when you are witnessing, of course, the mass slaughtering of children on the taxpayer dime of Canadians, Americans, Europeans, as Israel continues its ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And the only Palestinian American lawmaker just got censured for it. And that is fucked. That's one of the reasons why it just puts such a damper on, yes, these very important election victories, and yes, all of this very, very important COPIUM. And then in addition to all of that, this happened.
I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all.
You just listened to a portion of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib's speech during a debate on whether or not the House should move forward with a motion to censure her. Now, that motion...
He's not saying censured, he's saying censored. No, I'm not saying censored, I'm saying censured. But maybe my, you know, I have a Canadian accent, right? You know, I have to suppress it at all times then, eh? This is what I sound like normally, you know, you hosers. This is my real voice. So I'm always trying to have to suppress my Canadian accent for you. So that's why I put on my radio voice.
Advanced in a 208 to 213 vote. And at the time that I record this video, I don't know the outcome of the final vote, but who knows what.
I've spent hours in front of the mirror trying to have a radio announcer voice, you know. I've tried to have the most, newsworthy, journalistic, white voice in media. That's what I've been working on. I've been trying to suppress my Canadianness for all of you, for the benefit of every single one of you, and you don't appreciate it.
Which way it's going to go. Either way, this effort is nefarious and disingenuous, and that's what I want to talk about. Now, on top of that vote and that debate, Marjorie Greene has reintroduced her resolution to censure Tlaib after it failed the first time last week. Now, this entire effort, it is comprised of lies, hypocrisy, bigotry, and cowardice. And this is a coordinated attempt to condemn the only elected Palestinian American woman in Congress. And we're going to get to why I say that. I think it's going to be evident towards the end of this video. But first, I do want to show you more of her speech because what she says here is critically important.
Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States we helped elect dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings.
That right there.
I just want to quickly play this clip of something I'm working on just so you can get the difference between those who are trying to use this moment to be like, well, this is why we call for a humanitarian pause.
Conditions of a ceasefire can vary greatly depending on the two warring factions. Typically, it means a stoppage of war where both sides agreed to suspend aggressive actions and direct combat. In the past, it went by terms like truce or armistice in order to begin negotiations between warring factions. In the modern age, if abiding by the rules of the United Nations Security Council, resolutions via Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, it's an internationally observable end to violence so that a diplomatic resolution can begin being negotiated. A pause for humanitarian aid will typically pause direct fire between the two warring factions to allow for the flow of medical supplies or food or Doctors Without Borders to enter the region to try and help the toll the conflict is taking on civilians, and then after agreed upon period, the warfare will resume. The terms of a ceasefire include humanitarian aid to travel into the region, so why pick one over the other? Because if a conflict involved two factions that were completely asymmetrical, where one side is an impoverished civilian population of half children who have been kept in what is described as the world's largest open-air prison, where in the best of times, they barely...
Oh, content warning, there is footage of traumatized and injured children. No dead children, but traumatized and injured children.
...have clean drinking water, electricity, and access to medical supplies. And the other side was backed by the most powerful military force in the world, and up to this point cut off that civilian population of half children from access to all food, fuel, water, and medical supplies, and then they bombed hospitals, children's schools, medical centers, news outlets, universities, refugee camps, and killed over 4,000 kids in under a month. Well, the idea of putting a pause on it, rather than trying to stop it, suddenly becomes very fucked.
I want to just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you could have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas.
Is what speaking truth to power looks like. And currently, it's a really lonely place, unfortunately. The people behind Rashida Tlaib there, they were showing solidarity and support, and I really am thankful that she has some people by her side at least. But for the most part, most people in Congress are against her, including Democrats. But despite that, future historians are going to look back at this moment, and they're probably going to be shocked by the treatment of Congress's lone Palestinian American voice. But we're going to listen to some of the reasons why Republican Congressman Rich McCormick believes that Tlaib should be censured. What he says here is important because he is the individual who sponsored this resolution, but nonetheless, I'll let him explain why he supports this.
Whereas Representative Rashida Tlaib, within 24 hours of the October 7 barbaric attack on Jewish citizens of the State of Israel, representing the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust, defended the brutal rapes, murders, beheadings, and kidnappings, including of Americans, by Hamas as justified resistance to the, quote, apartheid state.
Justified, by the way. You can add anything you want after that. You justified this. You said this was good, right? By the way, just for contrast.
As a whole, I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as is frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II.
Now, some Democrats proposed, a censuring of Brian Mast, but that never ended up happening. It was Rashida Tlaib who ended up being censured.
End quote. Whereas on October 18, 2023, Representative Tlaib continued to knowingly spread the false narrative that Israel intentionally bombed the Al-Ali Arab Hospital on October 17 after United States intelligence, Israeli intelligence, and President Biden assessed with high confidence that Israel did not cause the explosion. Whereas on November 3, 2023, Representative Tlaib published on social media a video containing the phrase, quote, from the river to the sea, end quote, which is widely recognized as a genocidal call to violence to destroy the state of Israel and its people, to replace it with a Palestinian state extending from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea.
Now, if you didn't know any better, you would think that Rashida Tlaib was a terrible person based on his assessment of her comments, but the problem is he is lying. So let's get back to her original statement where he accuses her of defending Hamas's rapes and murders and kidnappings. First and foremost, she expressed remorse for the lives lost that day, but explained that the apartheid conditions perpetuated by the Israeli government is what's fueling radicalism that endangers both Israelis and Palestinians. And she says, quote, the path to that future of peace must include lifting the blockade, ending the occupation, and dismantling the apartheid system that creates the suffocating, dehumanizing conditions that can lead to resistance. Understanding why something happens is not the same thing as justifying it. Rich McCormick knows this, but he chose to pretend as if Tlaib is literally defending rape and murder as justified resistance. Now, you can accuse her of being unclear with her words. You can say that that statement should have been worded better, but saying that she justified Hamas's brutality is downright slander. It's a smear, and he knows it. Now, he also says that she knowingly spread false information about the hospital bombing. Now, perhaps she also maybe should have waited a little bit longer before commenting on that. You can make that case, but weeks later, we still don't really know. Sure, U.S. intelligence says one thing, but the independent analyses that we've seen from the New York Times, Channel 4, and Al Jazeera say that it's likely the bomb came from Israel. Now, for me, I tend to agree more with journalists than our intelligence agencies, considering that they also told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. But again, we don't know. I don't know. He doesn't know. But what we do know is that since that bombing took place, regardless of who did it, Israel has bombed ambulances. They've bombed refugee camps. They've bombed the cancer ward of a pediatric hospital. They've used white phosphorus. They've slaughtered the families of journalists. They've dropped lots of bombs since then. And your silence about those bombings says quite a bit, does it not? But when it comes to the use of from the river to the sea, which he also condemns, it
Quite 185, thanks for giving a tier 1 sub to VI Joe. Appreciate all your gifted subs, Quite 185.
is true that the phrase has been used by Hamas, and the way that they use it is genocidal, which makes it seem tainted to the rest of us. But Palestinians still use the phrase despite Hamas's co-optation, and contrary to popular belief, when Palestinians who are not Hamas, which is the overwhelming majority of them, use that phrase, they are not calling for genocide. Palestinian historian Maha Nassar has an in-depth write-up about this in Forward, which is a Jewish publication, by the way, and she explains that the phrase became popular in the 1960s, long before the existence of Hamas, as an effective call for a a single secular state with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians. And today there are still calls for a one-state solution, which is why the phrase is still used. And people who call for a one-state solution are doing so because the possibility of a two-state solution seems impossible at this point. In fact, Avi Schlein, a British-Israeli historian, explains why a two-state solution is dead, and you'll notice that as he advocates for a one-state solution, he invokes from the river to the sea, and you're going to see why he uses that term.
I used to support a two-state solution, but Israel has killed the two-state solution with the settlements. It's a struggle now between right-wing ethno-nationalism and liberal ethno-nationalism, and I don't approve of either. An essential element of democracy is equal rights. Today I support one democratic state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, with equal rights for all its citizens, regardless of religion and ethnicity. The experience that my family and I had of living together, coexisting with Arabs, gives me reason for hope that what happened once in the Middle East can happen again.
So when he invokes from the river to the sea, he is not talking about genocide. He's talking about peaceful coexistence. That is the context within which Rashida Tlaib is also using it. And it's not like we have to speculate about that because she explained the context within which she uses this phrase. Quote, "From the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. My work and advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity." Now, you can argue that she still shouldn't use it because Hamas uses it, therefore it's bad, or it's going to have a different meaning now since Hamas has been using it. But I can't fault oppressed people who refuse to let language they use to advocate for themselves be co-opted. And on top of that, the context matters. So even if you think that she shouldn't use that phrase, you don't get to pretend as if she is using it in a way that is indistinguishable from Hamas. But that's what McCormick is doing. He's saying that her use of "from the river to the sea" is indistinguishable from Hamas. It's a lie, but it hasn't stopped Republicans from repeating it. For example, Marsha Blackburn took to Twitter to accuse Rashida Tlaib of supporting a genocide as well. But it's a slanderous lie, and they know it's a lie. This isn't about Rashida Tlaib supporting violence and genocide because they know that she doesn't. She's more peaceful.
So for the human shields thing, the thing is, quote, "Human shields is a specific charge that requires specific evidence, and human rights groups like Human Rights Watch have looked into it and found that it's, quote, bullshit, a catch-all post hoc rationalization for the killing of civilians." In the 2009 report, in the killing document in this report, Human Rights Watch found no evidence that civilian victims were used by Palestinian fighters as human shields or were shot in the crossfire between the opposing forces. In each of the incidents, Israeli forces appeared in control, and Palestinian fighters had left the area in question. The civilian victims were in plain view and posed no apparent security threat.
Than all of them. What this is about is Rashida Tlaib daring to challenge the status quo that they don't want to be challenged. They want to maintain the status quo, and her challenging it is a threat. That's why they're trying to demonize her. That's why they're trying to silence her. And spineless Democrats who are too afraid to challenge power are joining Republicans in this witch hunt against the only Palestinian American in Congress as well. Take Democrat Jared Moskowitz, for example, who explains why he didn't support Green's censure resolution, but he will be supporting this one.
It sounds like you're contemplating supporting a censure resolution against her if there were one. I assume you voted against the one that Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene brought up a censure having to do with an insurrection, and let's be
clear. Of course, it was not an insurrection.
It was not an insurrection, and October 7th should not be conflated with any other date on the calendar.
So, but if there were one that was more about what she said that I just read, that's something you would support.
If a censure comes on her misinformation on the hospital bombing, which obviously we know was not true, that she continued to spread even after intelligence came out, it wasn't true, and on From the River to the Sea, I would support that censure.
If you're wondering why this Democrat is joining Republicans to censure one of his Democratic colleagues, well, all you have to do is follow the money. AIPAC, a racist, insurrectionist Republican supporting organization, is his #1 campaign contributor, or was for the 2022 cycle. So I'm assuming that his refusal to call for a ceasefire and condemnation of his Palestinian colleague has something to do with that. But he's not alone, because 70 Democrats have also condemned the phrase, including Richie Torres, Shontel Brown, Josh Gottheimer, Steny Hoyer, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Dina Titus, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and others. And Democrats from her home state have also come out to loudly denounce her. For example, Michigan Senate President Jeremy Moss denounced her, saying Hamas uses the phrase as a rallying cry, and they don't simply want to displace Jews in Israel, they want Jews dead. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who bungled the case against criminals who poisoned Flint's water, writes, I have supported and defended you countless times, even when you have said the indefensible, because I believed you to be a good person whose heart is in the right place, but this is so hurtful to so many. Please retract this cruel and hateful remark. Noah Arbit, a state representative for West Bloomfield, writes, it is disturbing and enraging that Jewish communities in Southfield, Franklin, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and beyond are represented by someone who adopts wholesale the call for the state of Israel to be wiped from the map, necessitating the elimination of 8 million Jews. I mean, this is downright defamatory. She is calling for freedom from oppression, freedom from a genocide being conducted against Palestinians. And as everyone else turns away, they're saying, actually, no, the person who is saying genocide is bad is actually the person who supports genocide. It is very Orwellian and despicable. So everyone is condemning her. Members of Congress, her own Democratic colleagues, politicians in her state are speaking past her, accusing her of genocide, even though she has made it very clear she does not support that. She supports peace for both Israelis and Palestinians because she's a good person and a proponent of peace. It's not just this issue where she advocates for peace. Look at her record. But yet, she's the only politician in that state who actually is doing what they're supposed to do. She's representing her constituents. Most Americans support a ceasefire. Her constituents in Michigan support a ceasefire. And she was one of the first to call for a ceasefire, while almost every other politician hid in a corner somewhere shitting themselves at the thought of daring to utter the word ceasefire. It's pathetic. And rather than condemning Israel's war crimes, these cowards are trying to turn Tlaib into public enemy number one in order to distract you from their support of an actual genocide. For example, Josh Gottheimer told CNN's Manu Raju that he will indeed be voting to censure Tlaib in the wake of her River to the Sea comment after he himself allegedly blamed all Muslims for Hamas's attack. So he reportedly...
Oh yeah, if there was one person I wanted to see the video of as soon as, like, you know, that vote went through, I was like, I can't wait for Mike's video on this topic. I know he's going to cover like every aspect of it properly.
Interjected loudly in a Democratic meeting and either said all Muslims are guilty or they all should feel guilty. Now, regardless of what he said, promoting this idea of collective responsibility, blaming an entire group of people, all Muslims, for the acts of Hamas is rhetoric that is used to justify genocide. I mean, this is what the president of Israel said. You know, they are all guilty in Gaza because they didn't rise up to overthrow Hamas. So you have Josh Gottheimer saying that, being explicitly Islamophobic, but yet Democrats are feigning concern over Tlaib's words.
By the way, I don't know if you all saw this today. One of the official accounts, it's since been deleted, but photo, Israel is back in hashtag Gaza, and we are here to stay in our ancestral land and our ancient beaches. Pretty damn clear and concise.
Haven't bothered to call out explicitly genocidal rhetoric from Republicans they're aligning with to condemn her, or call out the Islamophobia of their colleagues, like Josh Gottheimer and his gross generalization of all Muslims. But guess what? People are paying attention. We're seeing the cowardice, and it's not going to go unnoticed. In fact, this was pointed out on MSNBC as well.
I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as is frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II.
Eamon, you and I have discussed outrageous statements made by Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert on this show, in this handover, for years now. I cannot think of a more outrageous statement from a Republican politician than what I just heard, basically saying civilians in Gaza have no protections. They could be targeted. They can be killed. It's open season. By saying they're not civilians, they're like Nazis. And I just think about how much time we have spent this week. Americans have spent looking at college campuses and protesters' placards and what phrases are used. And yet, this guy, I haven't had anyone denouncing him from the top of the Democratic Party.
No, I mean, the comments, they're not only abhorrent, they reflect a deep ignorance from this congressman who we should also note showed up to...
Oh, he was the one who was like taking photo ops in the IDF uniform, even though he never served in the IDF. I remember seeing those pictures and then like seeing everyone in the comments being like, wait, isn't this stolen valor?
Congress dressed in an Israeli military uniform in the early days of this war. But as you said, this is a reflection of where the Republican Party is in this country, where the discourse is in this country at the moment. And it's troubling and it's scary.
He served with the IDF, not in the IDF, next to them. Gotcha.
It reflects an anti-Palestinian sentiment that's not just in words. I mean, you actually now have a member of the Republican Party, Representative Ryan Zinke, who introduced this bill to basically ban Palestinians from this country, to strip Palestinians who are in this country and have them deported. And it goes to show you the grotesque level of anti-Palestinian sentiment that now has plagued the Republican Party, not only in words, but in actions as well. So I am not surprised. It is disgusting. It is shameful. And as you said, it goes unchecked and it goes without any...
Damn, depressed progressive. Thank you for the incredibly generous 1,000 biddies. I appreciate that.
Condemnation from the highest levels of the Republican Party.
And no condemnation from the highest level of the Democratic Party, which really upsets me.
Yeah. They're too busy accusing Rashida Tlaib of genocide to notice the genocide that Israel is doing in Gaza, or even notice the Republicans who are literally justifying the deaths of innocent Palestinian civilians. But I mean, it goes back to this general bigotry against Palestinians that is socially permissible in the U.S. And that explains why there's so much hate directed at the only Palestinian.
By the way, just for more context, and I'm going to say, I'm not going to show you the footage. I know there's only so much horrifying footage everyone can ingest every single day online. But Euromed Monitor was speaking about this today. If you hadn't seen, there's a video coming out of Gaza today of people's hands literally shaking as they're trying to fill water bottles, and then also just trying to lick the water bottles from whatever, like, you know, moisture is left on the inside, aka people are on the verge of dying from dehydration. The Israeli forces destroyed 70 industrial facilities and 970 residential units in the Gaza Strip, documented by Euromed Human Rights Monitor. Israel's committing widespread crimes against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. Euromed Monitor said amidst 4 consecutive days of the escalating war, Israel's cut off Gaza's electricity, water, food, fuel supplies, and creating a threat of imminent humanitarian catastrophe. They stated the Israel attack has resulted in the death of 880 Palestinians, with approximately 59% of them being civilians, including 185 children and 120 women. Around 5,000 others were injured, with hundreds remaining trapped under the rubble along the border areas. The army is expanding its military operations. What's happening in Gaza represents a comprehensive humanitarian disaster, especially with the lack of electricity and water affecting more than 90% of residents and the disruption of various essential supplies. About 40 media and press institutions have been damaged or completely destroyed due to Israel's targeting of residential and commercial buildings, including Palestine and Watan towers. 56 schools and roughly 30 kindergartens have been affected. Euromed monitors recorded the destruction of at least 70 industrial facilities, 970 residential units, plus a significant damage to 7,920 residential units. 14 water and sanitation stations have been severely damaged. The statement said, affecting services for nearly 500,000 people. Israel's warplanes bombed a house belonging to the Zanin family in Beit Hanun, northern Gaza, without prior warning, destroying a 4-story building where 4 families lived. The bombing resulted in the death of 20 civilians inside, including 11 children and 5 women. In a similar incident, an Israeli aircraft with a prior warning targeted a house belonging to the Nabahin family east of the Beirij refugee camp in central Gaza, directly hitting residents. The attack led to the death of 13 people, including 10 children and 2 women. Additionally, a 4-story house and neighboring house were completely destroyed. This is all very recently, by the way. This is, you know, stuff that is happening within the past 48 hours. And it's becoming beyond dire at this point. So people speaking out about it should not be the ones who are being censured for saying we should put an immediate end to this carnage.
American. It's bigotry, it's Islamophobia, and it's racism. And because she dares to challenge the status quo and defend her people, Republicans and Democrats are tripping over themselves to condemn her. They are the biggest fucking cowards on the planet, and I have no respect for them. But thankfully, some Democrats are actually taking notice of all of the terrible things that
can't believe Katie Porter is amongst them, you know? Like everyone else, I love the chalkboards. I love the whiteboard. I love it when she's calling all those fucking CEOs to power and being like, hey, by the way, I just want to show you an example so people at home can understand how this really works. This is a bag of rice, and see, this is 1 grain in the bag of rice. And as I open the bag, you can now see the thousands of grain, blah, blah, blah. Can someone bring a whiteboard to Katie Porter's office, please, and explain to her what is going on in Gaza? Can someone do that? Can someone just put it in very plain and simple terms? Can someone list all the war crimes that have taken place already in the past month alone so that she can actually see them all stacked up and then actually look at them one-on-one and be like, oh shit, maybe that was bad of me to have done what I did.
Republicans are saying. Democrat Sarah Jacobs, for example, has moved to force a vote to censure Brian Mast for comments that are actually genocidal. And during the debate for this resolution, Ilhan Omar had some choice words for Mast.
It is glaring hypocrisy when you have Republicans on the other side of the aisle trying to create definitions and say Rashida wants to annihilate people.
50 years from now, young people ask, why was this allowed to say? What did you say to them? You know what's going to be great? So many people, when it's like, hey, what did you do after you discovered that 4,000 children had been massacred? Well, you'll be happy to know I spent a lot of time online asking if those people who were against it condemned Hamas and knew it was complicated. That's what I did. That's what I did in that moment in time. And I'm proud. I'm proud of myself for this.
When Max Miller himself went on TV and said we're turning Gaza into a parking lot and we want to annihilate Palestinians, nobody condemned him on that side of the aisle. What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity. Rashida will stand strong.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
The movement will continue for liberation until every single Palestinian has the right to
Gentleman
live
from
in
Maryland
liberty.
is recognized.
That was fantastic. It feels...
If you didn't know, children were giving a press conference yesterday outside of a hospital asking the world to please stop killing them. So... yeah, I mean, like, maybe we should be working towards a world where kids don't have to hold press conferences saying, please stop killing us. You know, that like, it's just so glaringly, just absolutely brutal to have to sit here and be like, well, she did use a phrase that we believe could be interpreted to be anti-Semitic. So because of that, this person is the person who we should be going afterwards.
So gross to see lawmakers feign outrage over Rashida Tlaib's support for genocide while they turn a blind eye to an actual genocide that's happening in Gaza. I mean, it's despicable. But it can't possibly be a genocide if you don't view the victims of Israel's indiscriminate bombs as human beings that are equal to you. And as that number grows, we all risk growing more detached from all the suffering because larger numbers are so much more difficult to visualize. So when we hear 4,000 Palestinian children are dead, we know that that's bad and it still might elicit a visceral response, but it's hard to imagine what that looks like. So I want to bring it down to a smaller scale and look at a couple of examples that have haunted my mind for weeks. So this 12-year-old Gazan boy, Ani Eldus, was just a couple of years older than my nephew. He was a gaming YouTuber. He loved video games, and his dream was to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and the video clip to the right is him announcing that he hit 1,000 subscribers. He is never going to realize this dream because he was killed in an Israeli airstrike. He's not responsible for the atrocities committed by Hamas. He wasn't even alive when they came to power. He was just a kid, and he wanted to be a gaming YouTuber, but his life is now gone forever. Now, this last one is also incredibly heartbreaking. This is 7-year-old Mujahid, who drew a picture for the people who were giving him chemotherapy for his cancer, and him and his entire family were killed after a bomb was dropped on his home. Just 7 short years of life. We're talking about human beings. Their lives are precious. Like us, they feel pain. They have hopes and dreams. They want to live. And one of the few members of Congress who is advocating for their right to exist is being slandered by everyone who's too fucking afraid to tell Israel to stop. Because they don't know what that would mean for their political career. Or they don't know if, that's going to elicit some backlash. Who cares? How can you see the images that we're all seeing and remain silent? I mean, in this instance, silence is violence. If you're not speaking out against this, you are complicit. And that goes for everyone who refuses to call for a ceasefire. Bernie Sanders, my representative, Joe Biden, they're all cowards. And they absolutely deserve to be condemned by us until they call for a ceasefire. I mean, when we look back at this moment years from now, I want you to ask yourself, which side do you want to have been on? The side who defended human dignity, Rashida Tlaib, who's saying, I want all Palestinians and Israelis to be free, or the side who didn't, the side who turned a blind eye to genocide? I know which side I'm on.
That ending was hard to sit through. God damn. Great work by Mike. Go subscribe to the Humanist Report. He's producing and putting out great content. And he's right, eventually it just becomes a number to a lot of people. And a number that other people are just willing to fucking, including the President of the United States, downplay. Be like, oh, I don't know if those numbers coming out are entirely accurate at the end of the day. And, maybe we have to put it in terms of 9/11s in order for, there's been over a 9/11 of children alone killed in the past month for them to start actually recognizing what is going on, or hopefully putting, like, maybe that is an important tactic. We have to start just humanizing every single life and telling them their stories. And that way people actually stop thinking them as just like savages or subhumans who are, intentionally living in poverty, 24/7 because they cannot simply build the society. That's why it's so fucking disgusting to see people saying things like, well, yeah, if only Hamas spent time building, airports, then maybe they would have better lives. Instead, they have to go and attack, Israeli civilians. And it's like that you're not allowed to build infrastructure in that part of the world. Everything is absolutely restricted. This is, again, it's not called an open air prison as a fucking meme. It's like, it's absolutely disgusting to continuously push the same shit that just continues to dehumanize them. And if I'm not wrong, yeah, wasn't their airport, their single airport destroyed in like 2002 or 2003? And by the way, that goes to the larger discussion right now, where I find a lot of people online with their huge social media accounts using their social media clout and all the stuff they have to go after Jewish people speaking out against the war. Lol Overruled is getting quote tweeted because he's like, I can't vote for either of these people. Posting a picture of Donald Trump and Biden. Again, a very prominent Jewish activist who is speaking out against everything that is happening. Muslim influencers and people with social media accounts such as Frogan, expressing their disgust at what is taking place. People have chosen to instead, rather than go after, say, Joe Biden, the person who is directly funding this right now and endorsing this right now, instead of using their energy against him, going after all of these social media influencers, quote tweeting them saying, oh, you children, do you not realize Trump would be bad too? Of course they fucking do. No one saying I'm disgusted by Joe Biden is saying, you know what, now think Donald Trump would be better. No one is saying that. Like, at what point do you stop playing team sports, stop saying, well, whatever Joe Biden says and does, I mean, I just have to be on board with it, because at the end of the day, he is trying to defend American interests by defeating terrorism overseas. I mean, this may be just part and parcel, almost verbatim, what we were doing in Iraq, word for word, which I do call out, by the way. I was one of the people who was fooled by this whole thing that, in order to defeat terrorism and ideology, that we should actually, be invading sovereign nations and bombing civilian populations to the ground. I can call out George Bush and all of those terrible neocon warhawks for what they were doing. But right now, what is taking place in Gaza is obviously a strategic military operation in order to defeat Hamas. And yes, there's obviously huge human casualties that come with that. But that's unfortunately just kind of the price of war. In order to, again, defeat an enemy like Hamas, this has to be done. And now CBS comes out and says, well, Israeli officials have said that they have eliminated 60 key Hamas fighters so far. And it's like, so that's the toll. 42% of all homes in that region damaged or destroyed. Over 10,000 civilians, over 4,000 children have been slaughtered. But that was, again, to get at 60 key Hamas fighters. Okay. Well, there's a reason why people are very, very upset about it.
Justice, you say how? Lift the siege on Gaza now! Lift the siege on Gaza now!
We're here in Washington, D.C. at the National March for Palestine. Now, this march comes after weeks of endless bombing on Gaza and attacks in the West Bank as well by the Israeli government with funding from the Biden administration.
After the initial Hamas attack on October 7th and weeks of retaliatory bombing by the Israeli military, as well as further actions as forced evacuations and cutting off Palestinian water supply and power, people are here to demand that the U.S. push for a ceasefire.
Now, we're told this might be the largest march for Palestinian solidarity in North American history. There are thousands of people here in support of Palestine. I've actually never seen this many people in a North American protest in solidarity with the Middle East ever.
If you are a friend of this movement, you need to be a friend of this movement at the most dire moment.
I'm out here in solidarity with Palestinians and also with many Jewish comrades calling for a ceasefire and an end to the siege on Gaza. There is nothing inherently anti-Semitic about opposing the loss of human life, about supporting a ceasefire, a de-escalation, and an end to this siege.
We're here today because of the United States government enabling this apartheidian state. It's a settler state, it's a garrison state, and so we're here today in arms with the people of the world, like we were with Mandela or Martin Luther King, and that's where we stand.
For people of color, we have experienced so much trauma. We've lived through slavery, we lived through colonization, apartheid. We understand. When we see what's happening to Palestinians, this triggers us on a visceral level, and it makes us feel like we have to do something.
It's a big sign that this many Americans are showing out in defiance of not only what the Israeli government is doing, but also the Biden administration, and condemning the funding that they're giving to Israel and the IDF. What does it feel like to have tens of thousands of people behind you right now marching in solidarity?
It really symbolizes the fact that I believe that the people will win, and we will win. Free Palestine!
I like this sign. Can you tell me about what the watermelon represents?
The Palestinian flag.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same color. They don't allow, why, Mama? They don't allow us to raise our flag in Palestine. The IDF don't allow us, the Israeli occupation does not allow us to raise our Palestinian flag or voices.
The whole world is watching 2.5 million people being slaughtered without water, without food, without medicine. Where's the world? The world is watching them die, one after the other. A lot of people under the rubble. Over 10,000 people dead already. Over 20,000 people are injured. Where's the humanity? Israel is above the law. Nobody can touch Israel. The United States, Israel has the right to defend itself.
Exactly.
So call it defending itself. Going killing kids. Over 4,000 kids dead already.
America went
over
crazy
4,000.
when Russia invaded Ukraine.
Where is the world? Where's the humanity for these kids?
Where you find 4,000 kids, King?
Huh?
Where you find out that 4,000
No,
people?
I know that they have the names. They have the names. Check the record.
I checked the record.
Check the record. They have the names.
4,000 kids.
Okay. Yeah, over 4,000 kids already dead. All right. So you need to wake up, and you need to tell it like it is. And what's really going on is a genocide. ولك أنت حيوان.
أنت حيوان.
أنت حيوان يا حيوان.
So we were just talking to someone who had grown up in the West Bank and who was just devastated at how many children had died from the bombings by Israel. Then a man came over and started questioning the numbers that this Palestinian was giving during the interview, and things got a little tense. And that's really the only time we've seen anything like that so far.
What do we want? When do we want it?
The crowd is continuing to go towards the White House, and I'm frankly interested to see how they will respond to the tens of thousands of people who are marching through these streets as the sun sets in Washington, and see if they're listening to their constituents who are here in the streets demanding they take action.
The protests continued on into the evening as the crowd continued to march towards the White House. Police reported only one arrest. It's now up to the Biden administration to respond.
Well, I'm sure they'll put out a strongly worded statement. Oh, this is a really good video. I learned a lot of things.
If you're new here, hi. If you're not new here, hey. And I took the liberty of going through 613. Hey guys, I'm Lauren. I'm an American Jew. If you're new here, hi. If you're not new here, hey. And I took the liberty of going through 613 Jewish commandments, or mitzvot, which are the rules that we live by, the good things to do, not to do, you know. Some of them are very funny. There's an alarming amount on incest, which is worrying because I don't understand. Like, I understand why, but like, why did we have to have so many rules on incest? Why did we You know, like, why were we doing that? Anyway, I'm just gonna go through really quick. I wrote down all of the ones that I think Israel violates. Yeah. So not only do they violate like international law, they violate Jewish law. Okay, 13, to love your neighbor as yourself. That's crazy. Wow. 18, do not oppress the weak. Not that Palestinians are inherently weaker in like a eugenicist way, just that they've been put in a weaker position by Israel and the European and Western colonizing powers. 19, do not slander. So, you know, saying all Palestinians are terrorists, slander. 20, do not take revenge. 21, do not bear a grudge. 211, do not lie. 467, do not steal money stealthily. 472, do not move a boundary marker to steal someone's property. 473, do not kidnap. 474, do not withhold wages or fail to repay a debt. That one is in reference to Israel will withhold parts of the Sudanese refugees' wages and will only give them back if the Sudanese refugee agrees to leave and get deported, because Israel hates black people. Okay, 476, do not covet and scheme to acquire another's possessions. 482, a big one, do not murder. 486, do not kill a murderer before he stands trial. Actually, you know how they're so angry about Hamas and all the people that Hamas killed, right? But we aren't supposed to kill Hamas until they stand trial. According to Jewish law. I didn't make the rules, okay? 489, do not stand idly by if someone's life is in danger. 519, do not delay payment of wages past the agreed time. Again, with Sudanese refugees refusing to pay. 604, do not destroy fruit trees, even during a war. You know how they're burning down olive trees? So, and I'm sure Jewish scholars could, and rabbis could find even more rules that, the interpretation means that Israel's also breaking that rule, but these were, the most obvious ones, okay? So, to my Jewish people who are maybe on the fence, right? They are using our religion as a cover for their racist colonial actions, but they are clearly not following it. So they're using us, and they're doing this in our name. And that's not okay with me, and that shouldn't be okay with you. Judaism should not be about murdering people. There's a whole rule about that. So not only are they breaking international law and war crimes law, they're breaking Jewish law all the time. But because within their little ethno-state, the ultra-Orthodox are given basically free reign, they give the legitimacy of Judaism to the government. And I think that's wrong.
Where's the if you want to follow Lauren Westendorf on TikTok, making videos, educating people. We don't need to listen to the chipmunks. Oh yeah, I did want to talk about this. Okay, we can move on to this topic. Alex Jones can't use bankruptcy. Erupt.
Man, that Alex Jones fellow just can't catch a break. He can't use a fake bankruptcy to avoid billions of dollars of awards to these Sandy Hook victims.
I have $130,000 under penalty of perjury. There's no hidden accounts. There's nothing in the Caymans. There's nothing, on the moon. In the Caymans. There's nothing.
Yes, after years of spreading vicious lies and baseless conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook massacre, Jones was found liable to the victims' families for $1.5 billion. But Jones thought he'd discovered that one weird trick to weasel out of paying the people he hurt, declaring bankruptcy.
I
Declare.
Nope, do not cut to that video. It's too easy. Yeah, except that a judge in Texas just shot down that effort, declaring that as a matter of law, at least $1 billion of Jones's judgment debts cannot be wiped away by—
To be fair, he did do that. He did pretty much just like say it out loud, thinking therefore it applies.
by bankruptcy. Why, oh why, do bad things very occasionally happen to bad people? So let's look at how Alex Jones tried to use bankruptcy law to avoid paying billions of dollars and why that effort failed so spectacularly. Now, if you want a more detailed account of Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook trials, you can check out some of this channel's other videos on the subject, including the video I did where I explained how attorney Mark Bankston absolutely destroyed Jones on cross-examination. But to quickly summarize, for years, Alex Jones described the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre as a hoax and part of a secret government plot to take your guns. Jones's lies unleashed a wave of harassment on the victim families, who are very much real, triggering multiple civil lawsuits against him for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and other torts. In late 2022, a Connecticut jury awarded $965 million in compensatory damages and $473 million in punitive damages to the families of 26 people who were killed in the 2012 shooting.
Oh,
plus
Vivek
an
doesn't
FBI
think he's too
agent who was
extreme.
among the first
They're doing
responders.
crossovers now.
In August of 2022, a Texas jury found Jones liable for $4.2 million in compensatory damages and $45.2 million in punitive damages to Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, whose 6-year-old son was killed at Sandy Hook. And before that, in October 2021, a Texas judge found Jones liable for defamation against Leonard Posner and ex-wife Veronique De La Rosa, whose 6-year-old son was also killed. The pair are still waiting for a trial on damages. In all three cases, the courts had entered default judgments against Jones based on repeated violations of discovery orders, resulting in Jones being adjudged liable on all causes of action without trial. Yeah, that's what we like to call here a huge FAFO alert. But Jones had made it clear that he had no intention of ever paying his victims, calling the damage awards hilarious, and telling his audience he plans to file appeals to keep the victims in court for years. Jones also claims he's officially out of money, having repeatedly begged his audience to send him money to keep him on the air. And to that effect, Free Speech Systems, Jones's company that runs InfoWars, declared bankruptcy in July 2022, and Jones filed for personal bankruptcy in December. And since many people's understanding of bankruptcy is limited to knowing that's how you lose at Monopoly, here's a quick explainer.
Monopoly, I don't know if y'all have ever played it with your fam. Man, it takes forever, and it's just soul-crushing. You know, it's just absolutely soul crushing. You just got to sit there and like, you know, stare into your like cousins or nephew's eyes and then be like, yeah, you're broke now. But you don't get to stop playing. What's going to happen now is because I own a lot of your assets, you're just going to have to keep playing with me. Well, you have to give me dividends like each fucking round. So as we keep playing, it's going to take hours and hours. You can't even leave the game. No, you can't.
Filing for bankruptcy provides a legal process for the reduction or elimination of certain debts. In bankruptcy court, parties' debts, including those incurred by court judgments, are categorized as either dischargeable or non-dischargeable, depending on how they were incurred. If the court deems a debt to be dischargeable, the debtor is no longer personally liable for the underlying debt and is excused from any obligation to pay. Common examples of dischargeable debts include credit card and medical debt. In contrast, non-dischargeable debts cannot be extinguished.
I have 3 copies somehow because, you know, I forget what the name of the company is that makes all of those games, Parker or something like that. They did a really neat thing. They're like, why don't we just replace all the names with an IP that everyone already loves? Like The Simpsons, you know? So Boardwalk could all of a sudden become some Streets on Springfield and things like that. It's the exact same game. It's still just unbelievably cruel, boring, and long, but the names are going to be references you all like, and then so will the cards and stuff. So here, it's a new game. We got it, Simpsons Monopoly, and then you put it down. It's like, so the same thing is going to happen now because I own a lot of your assets. You can't stop playing, but there's absolutely mathematically no way you can win. You can't crawl out of this. It's absolute. Like even if you land the perfect hand of die every single time for the next like 20 rounds, you can't crawl out of this. You are so fucked, and you're just gonna have to keep on borrowing money to pay me over and over and over.
In bankruptcy, typically for public policy reasons. Section 523 of the Bankruptcy Code lists examples of non-dischargeable debts such as domestic support and tax
Parker
obligations.
Brothers, thank you.
Now, ultimately, Jones wants to have part or all of his $1.5 billion in judgments declared dischargeable, so he and his company no longer have to pay them. But to prevent Jones from erasing his judgment debts, the Sandy Hook plaintiffs formally intervened in the bankruptcy process. Now, of course, if you're ever hit with a $1.5 billion defamation judgment, you're going to need a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, my firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've been in a car crash, dealt with
Well, if you want to support this content, go watch the Eagles channel.
Expunged through bankruptcy. And a moving party is entitled to summary judgment upon showing that there is no genuine dispute as to any material fact that might affect the outcome of the suit, and thus the matter does not need to be decided by a full trial. Judges may also grant a partial summary judgment by ruling on some factual issues while leaving others for trial. And in separate state-specific motions, the Texas and Connecticut plaintiffs argue that the state court records establish that requisite undisputed facts to conclude that Jones inflicted willful and malicious injuries on the parties, and that the judgment debts arising out of such conduct are non-dischargeable as a matter of law. The plaintiffs further argued that
I really want Alex to do a response video to this, just to talk. He'll throw it with tons of conspiracy theories, probably some anti-Semitic stuff in the middle of all that, just for good measure, and just make an entire video on it. Oh yeah, legal is actually part of the deep state. He's controlled by the lizard people. That's why he all said this, and it's all part of the deep state. Everybody.
Jones is barred from relitigating the finding that his conduct was willful and malicious under the principle of collateral estoppel, because those facts were conclusively established before a different court. That's one of those rules that prevents someone that lost in court to go to a different jurisdiction and get a different trial and trying to undo that verdict. And not surprisingly, Jones opposed summary judgment, arguing that there has not been a formal determination of willful and malicious injury because the state court findings were default judgments, not full trials, and therefore collateral estoppel did not apply. And Jones further argued that the state court judgments against him were unfair and unconstitutional, and the bankruptcy court should not grant them full faith and credit by honoring their validity. And in two state-specific rulings against Jones, but not his company, U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Christopher Lopez of the Southern District of Texas granted partial summary judgment on most of the issues in favor of the Sandy Hook plaintiffs, while declaring that a few issues—
Oh damn! Suck it, Tanuki. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs.
Statistically, the most common space to land in Monopoly is jail, in the literal game of capitalism, and there aren't enough pieces to have.
True. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Everyone who just got a free subby, give Suck it, Tanuki a big thank you.
Couldn't be summarily resolved and had to go to trial. Now, under long-standing Supreme Court precedent, collateral estoppel prevents issues of fact that were already determined by a valid and final judgment in a previous lawsuit from being relitigated in any subsequent lawsuit that involves the same parties. In bankruptcy court, plaintiffs can invoke collateral estoppel to establish that a debt is non-dischargeable. To determine if collateral estoppel—
Thank you for the other 5 gifted subs to add. What's the message? Houses on each property. There you have it.
Applies, courts analyze the law of the state in which the judgments were entered. Under Texas law, collateral estoppel bars parties from relitigating issues when 1, the facts sought to be litigated in the second action were fully and fairly litigated in the first action, 2, those facts were essential to the judgment in the first action. And the standard for collateral estoppel in Connecticut is basically the same with slightly different verbiage.
Okay, I want to get to what does this mean for Alex Jones?
Including the presenting of evidence for the Connecticut and the Heslin-Lewis damages trial, but chose not to comply with discovery orders, knowing full well that he risked default judgment. So Jones has no one to blame but himself for his own predicament. And explaining why the court will give full faith and credit to the Connecticut and Texas default judgments, Judge Lopez quoted the Illinois case of Herbstein versus Bretman, quote, where a litigant participated extensively, then failed to comply with an express court order issued multiple times at a risk of incurring default, the litigant should not now be able to sidestep the collateral estoppel doctrine and litigate an issue in this forum that was forestalled in another court due solely to the litigant's decisions. The litigant is not entitled to a second bite at the apple. The issue underlying the default judgment were actually litigated for the purposes of the collateral estoppel doctrine. So to be clear, this saga is far from over. I don't know that we'll ever be.
No, just to be clear, the leftist mafia is not covering the debate tonight, both because a lot of people have other stuff that they're doing, but also because, like, is there even a point at this point? I think it's like down to 4 candidates, none of whom can become the next president. Oh, sorry, the primary candidate for the Republican Party. It's just like, it's pointless.
In the little game of capitalism, either you end up in jail, or you are unable to find housing because there aren't enough houses to match the properties.
But keep playing Monopoly. Enjoy it. Hey, thank you for the other 5 gifted subs. It's very generous of you.
Over. Jones still has the right to appeal this ruling and the judgments in the other cases, but this is a monumental victory for the plaintiffs. And it's likely that without this ruling, that Jones could have been free to liquidate the debt-saddled free speech systems while being allowed to start another similar company free from the judgment debts. This in turn would have put the same—
Okay, so that was cutting through everything else. That's what I wanted to know, because some people were being like, well, you know what he's going to do? He's just going to form a new company or get one of his associates to form a new company, and then under that new company, they're basically going to still just make vast amounts of money selling dick pills to everybody, and at the end of the day, that's going to fuck everyone over. So you got to do something about it. And I was like, yeah, but like you get it, right? You get why that this like, I don't think you can do that. And not in this case. I don't think you can just keep making ghost companies, even if they're founded by, you know, other people who aren't like your direct relatives, and then keep saying like, well, it's not me, you see, it's this. There's another LLC.
families on the path of collecting only a fraction of the awarded damages. Now, the Sandy Hook families can continue to seek the maximum amount of recovery, and of course, Alex Jones could have avoided all this drama if he just paid what he owes.
Hey, next time pay your bills. But I don't want to.
But that's pretty weak tea, which is the opposite of the excellent coffee that I get from today's sponsor, Trade Coffee.
If you like that content, please go subscribe and check out Legal Eagle's channel. Gonna move on for 1 minute. Who's selling dick pills? Alex Jones is selling dick pills amongst everything, like paleo, chicken, caveman skin, or whatever, to be able to maximize your testosterone levels or some shit. So, if you have been following the saga that Republicans have been talking about, to not talk about their horrifying election losses, or the fact that right now they are pretty much just standing by while the government of the United States is doing horrifying actions overseas, but they don't want to talk about that because they also support the government of Israel. They're talking about Crowder's revelation of the Nashville shooter manifesto. Now, manifestos, in large part, are not allowed to be published on YouTube. There's a reason why a lot of people don't allow for the publishing of mass shooters manifestos, in large part due to the fact that experts have said doing so can inspire other mass shooters, as does, naming the shooters by name and all that kind of stuff, which is why I take a strong stance not to do so on this show. That's not to say that it doesn't pop up because of the articles that I'm reading or stuff like that, but when editing it and putting it into YouTube and stuff like that, I'll usually do my due diligence to make sure that it's all censored and stuff. Right now, Seth Dillon and all of them are spreading the conspiracy theory that they are being censored because of the content of the manifesto, proving all of them right, which is also false, by the way. Their theories and the conspiracy theories that all of these right-wing ghouls were spreading for a really long time was that the Nashville shooter was trans and that this was a hate crime against Christians and cis people being committed by a trans individual, that it had to do with gender ideology and all that kind of stuff. And this was going to be part of a new conspiracy about how the trans day of vengeance was coming and was upon us, and everyone had to be very scared for this. And they kept on pushing this idea over and over and over again. And now that they have several pages, or allegedly several pages, of the manifesto in their possession, and Candace Owens is suggesting that the reason that they have it is that cops sold it to Steven Crowder. Whether or not that's true, I guess we'll find out. But apparently they're saying now it's being censored by big tech. YouTube is cracking down on them. Google is cracking down on them. Anyone who's trying to speak out against this in the TOS violation way, this is the reason why. Now, obviously, Alejandra Caraballo calls this out right away, but Seth Dillon says, normally we're flagged for misinformation, incitement, or hateful conduct. This is our first violent criminal organization's policy violation. And Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee gets, hi, not the Bee. We wanted to let you know that our team has reviewed your content and we think it violates our criminal organizational policy. We know you may not have realized this was a violation of our policies, so we're not applying a strike to your channel. However, we've removed the following content. Is the leaked Nashville shooter manifesto legit? What does it say about censorship in the United States? Alejandra points out, tech companies have always prohibited sharing the manifestos of mass shooters. They've removed copies and excerpts of manifestos of the Christchurch and Buffalo mass shooters, which featured violent, racist, anti-Semitic imagery. It is not a conspiracy. The Buffalo and El Paso mass shooters copied most of their manifesto from the Christchurch shooter manifesto. These things inspire further violence, which is why sharing and distributing them is heavily discouraged and often prohibited by social media companies. Now, Crowder has put a publication that he did with NBC Nashville.
So the first thing I wanted to ask, how do you describe why your source wanted this released? I understand that, but walk me into how this came into your possession.
Yeah. So it came in, let me kind of give you, I guess, would you like sort of a verification timeline, I suppose?
That'd be fine too. Whatever you can provide, just so we can understand how you got. What you got.
So this is, we have when we launched, Mug Club and we partnered with Rumble, we were very forward about the fact that we have an investigative journalism unit and that we'll go to jail to protect our sources, right? If we need to, that we will keep them anonymous. It's encrypted, it's verified. So we get a lot of tips that come.
Hold on, this motherfucker sold out the Daily Wire without any provocation, just like that. And I know it's different, by the way. That's entirely different than you as a journalistic outfit trying to protect your sources, right? Which, by the way, he's just a transphobic, racist clown shoes operation. That's all they are. They're just bigots for pay. But he had no reason to reveal all that was happening behind the scenes when he was getting an incredibly lucrative offer from the Daily Wire. He had no reason to do that. He had no reason to record their conversations and then just leak them unprovoked, to the point where the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, had to come out and be like, well, it's you know, troubling and unusual that Steven Crowder is taking the stance and saying that we are now big con in collaboration with big tech. But no, what we were doing was offering him $50 million over a span of several years to produce his show here at the Daily Wire. I don't know why he's doing this, but here's the details. And then Crowder was like, this is a war. They were trying to censor me. They were trying to say that if I got demonetized for all of my racist N-word sketches, that I suddenly wouldn't be allowed to do what I did, and I'd have to, you know, I'd have to compensate them somehow. And it's like, well, yeah, sweetie, I don't know if you don't know how contract law works in media, but if someone is offering you $50 million, which is kind of just unheard of for a terrible digital media YouTube show of your caliber, but if you're getting $50 million offers to produce that terrible fucking racist ass show, then yeah, they're probably going to want some checks and balances in terms of you getting demonetized and not making any profit, because again, there's a lot of fucking money on the line. That's not the same as them censoring you. That's them saying, do whatever you want. You can have the N-word sketch, you can have the transphobic, you know, prison rape sketch, you can do all that kind of stuff, but if you get demonetized as a result of the violation of TOS policies, then we're going to want to recoup those losses. That's what we're saying. We're not trying to censor you. We're not trying to control your content. Go right ahead. We're just saying you have to bear the brunt of violating the terms of service.
The tip line, the proton mail, and this was one that was sent out, and then we went through the process of verifying it. So that involved an anonymous source to kind of, and I have to be careful because I want to make sure that I keep these people anonymous without giving too many details. So if you have questions, you can feel free to kind of, you know, ask me something and I'll tell you if I can't answer that because you're a...
This is definitely how every single journalist who protects their sources speaks, by the way. This is how they talk. You definitely see Ken Klippenstein doing this, right? When someone's like, will you reveal your source? Well, to protect my source, I can't, but like, I can kind of, do you want to play, you know, Guess Who? We could do that. We could do a little Guess Who, right? And then I can act on whether or not you're getting close or something like that, you know, just to make this content spicy. Let's have fun.
Stranger. But the anonymous source...
I live in the same world, man. I
yeah.
make my living off of anonymous sources, so I totally understand.
Well, and in this case,
I love how a reporter has to be like, "Yeah, don't worry, I that's my job, so I know about protecting sources. I'm not going to play Guess Who with you right now, so you know."
It's appropriate, right? As opposed to like an anonymous source said that Donald Trump's a pile of crap. It's like, well, we don't really need an anonymous source for TMZ stuff like that. But in this case, obviously, because people's jobs can be at stake, and you know, a lot of these folks don't necessarily trust the people who are in positions of authority, and let alone the media. So this source was kind of vague, right? Came to us through the tip line. Then a Mug Club undercover journalist followed up with an email and a phone call to, let's call this person source number one. They sent us pictures, right, or to the journalists after several phone calls. Okay. Then after that, our journalist, the undercover unit from Mug Club, flew to Nashville to meet with source one, review the phone, the text thread, from which included a source within the Nashville PD. We'll call that source two. A detective involved. The journalist from our end.
Did you not? When people say they're going to protect their sources, they don't do this. We'll just say that he worked for a protective agency. Let's say the Police, all right? And let's say he worked for Asheville. Yes, something like that. And then we'll say that maybe it rhymes with detective. Sorry, it rhymes with reflective. Something like that. Within, again, the Nashville Police Force. Yeah, we'll call that source 2. Yeah, let's go source 2 for the rest of this. So source 2.
Verified that the text thread was from 2 days after the shooting, and verified the phone number, authenticated source 2 as someone who was directly involved with the Nashville PD and was there actually, in fact, on the scene of the crime. So there were multiple verification steps, and I believe that we were not the only person that this source reached out to. They're very happy with, you know, how we tried to portray it as accurately as possible, and they were actually, for us, when a source...
He's using they-them pronouns a lot, but he's not exploding. It doesn't make sense. You know, why are you using they, them pronouns, but yet nothing's happening? I don't understand.
Source reaches out and they're apprehensive about us doing due diligence. We often simply don't follow up. This was someone who wanted to ensure that it was authentic and actually welcomed, you know, the process.
Okay. So from what I understand from your explanation is that your journalist that works for your team saw the images on the phone, but not the actual paper itself. So just the images that was sent that day.
Correct.
Okay.
The images that
this is still so much more information than any actual journalist will reveal to another individual who's reporting on a topic in relation to their sources.
That the images that were there with
just holy
a
shit
detective involved with this who confirmed it.
Gotcha. So your first source, not talking about the detective that ultimately sent the picture, because that's what's accurate, correct? It was a Metro detective that sent it to your source?
It was confirmed by them, yeah.
Okay, got you. Oh, the detective confirmed it to your person as well?
Yes.
Okay. How do you explain why your source wanted this released?
Well, I would imagine that it's very much in line with why everyone else wanted it released. You know, when we have Christchurch, when we have Jacksonville, when there's a laundry list of manifestos that are out there that portray this one way and are used, obviously, as a springboard, used as a cudgel for gun control. This was one that didn't really follow along with that narrative, and a lot of people thought that it was necessary for this to be out there. And there are people involved with the Nashville PD who also believe that things haven't been necessarily transparent, and that.
I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but I'm going to be very, very shocked if there isn't some kind of repercussions that come as a result of this interview that he did with an NBC Dispatch. Because at the end of the day, he is revealing so much information. And again, it's this weird, like, is anyone on the other side on team mass shooter? Right? Like they always say, like, oh, it's team sports. You're all playing team sports. Okay, so another white supremacist mass shooter. Yeah. Well, in this case, this one wasn't a white supremacist mass shooter. They targeted white people. And it's like, well, from the information that you have revealed and the pages that you've revealed, they also use the F slur a lot, calling the potential or alleged victims F slurs. You're not saying that this wasn't an anti-LGBTQ plus hate crime. You're using the C word. It's the C word that you're all grappling onto, saying that this is now an anti-white hate crime. Before, remember, it was, then the conspiracy was that this was a trans hate crime towards Christians and cis folk. But now that's all changed, you know, like magic. No one has to remember any of this ever happened. And now it's like, well, no, this definitely proves that this was a targeted hate crime towards white people. The term white privilege is used. And there's a lot of discussions about class, kind of like an intersection of class and class privilege that is also used. But ignore all that. That's CRT. But, you know, there's that. And then, you know, we're going to ignore the fact that the F slur is used more than the C word is used. I mean, if we were to total the frequency, maybe that would, but again, ignore that. And we're just going to say that some people wanted to have this released so that the narrative could be known. Even though the police themselves said that this was less of a manifesto and more of journal writings, and that there wasn't a coherent political ideology or motive that could be determined through it. And also the families of the victims specifically asked for it not to be released. In fact, that was something that court documents have revealed, that they didn't want it. So again, Steven Crowder, all these people don't give two fucks about any of that. They're just willing to be like, no, it helps the narrative.
It affects people. Look, this is someone who had a motivation, and this is someone with a very clear target. And so this can actually be productive in the sense that this can actually inform people as to, when we're talking about mental health, when we're talking about the struggle, as opposed to just jumping to gun control, we have information here that is relevant, that does provide context.
So does that mean you're going to want to start funding public mental health programs, access to mental health programs, any of that ever? If that's what we're going with, you know?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen, your staff is pretty good, I think, about keeping up to date on things, but you may have seen that the mayor's office is now calling for an investigation into your source.
Yes.
I wonder what you think about it.
Well, I'm wondering why the mayor didn't run an investigation into the shooting, because that's what they claim.
Oh man, if you are the source, you got to be nervous as fuck right now. Imagine if your job is on the line and you're watching this interview, and then he's just like, all right, so I just want to say that it may or may not have been verified by a person in the police department, and there may have been an independent detective who then certified that the source in question was reliable and all this kind of stuff. You're like, holy fuck, dude, shut the fuck up.
Right? They claimed that they were, but nothing. They claim that they have all of these documents, and I have yet to hear anyone from the police department. I know a spokesperson for the police chief said, we don't know anything about that. Well, hold on, are you running an investigation? In which case this would interfere, which would mean that you would be immediately familiar with what we release. And we have staked our reputation on the line. We are willing to.
Well, the problem is that's worth nothing. You know, you can't stake nothing and then have that as like, oh, well, I mean, this has to be verifiable at the end of the day. My credibility is what? Nothing. Yes, I submit nothing.
I stand by it. My sources stand by it. For them to say they don't know, what is it that they don't know? No one has even attempted to refute it. I've seen, by the way, I've also seen a lot of other people out there claim that they have confirmed its authenticity through their own sources, and I know that that's false, right? That's sort of a tag my name on there as well, where they want to act as though they have sources out there doing the groundwork. I know that there would be no way for them to confirm it.
Yeah, that is, there is a small number of people that have actually seen the documentation itself. I never want to misquote, so I'm looking for the email that was actually sent out from the mayor's office, because that's what it's important that I get your response.
Sure.
Exactly what he's saying is that he's dictated the Metro's law director to initiate an investigation into how these images could have been released. That investigation may involve local, state, and federal authorities. I am deeply concerned with the safety, security, and well-being of the Covenant families and all Nashvillians who are grieving. What's your response to his concern?
I'm deeply concerned with their safety as well, because 6 people are dead, 3 of them children. And we now know the motivation, or at least we have an idea as to the motivation.
No, you don't. No. And again, the families of those children who are dead have said, don't do this. Please don't do this. But then you just went and did it. You don't give 2 fucks. This is content. It's all content to you.
Their police chief went out and said, oh, maybe at some point we'll run an investigation. It's right there. How do we know what the motivation is? Because they said the motivation. How do we know who the targets were if they were pre-selected? The shooter claims that the targets were pre-selected. It's very clear. I shouldn't say very clear. This is someone who's obviously mentally deranged.
This has to be so weird for an NBC reporter to be doing this interview and to hear this kind of shit from someone who's now going from being, and again, the N-word transphobic sketch guy to being like, well, I'm a journalist. I do journalism, just like you. We have the same job. You protect your sources. I protect my sources. Here's all the information on my sources. And then to be like, well, there may have been a conspiracy where the police were trying to stop people from learning about this, because if they did, they would actually see the motivation as clear as day, which it isn't, again, because this person is mentally deranged. But there is certainly some things in there that I could use. The C word is used, so clearly this person hated white people. This was a self-hating white person. We can point towards that.
Of course, as well. Just to be clear, like, this is someone who was not mentally healthy. So when we also have this discussion about mental health in this country, well, then we need to examine why this person was mentally unwell, why this person talks about their anxiety, what it was that made this person tick, how this person wasn't able, if they were seeing people for help. And like you just said, the mayor is now
therein lies the rub. He's trying to go back to, he's been really enjoying the whole, like, oh yes, this is an attack on white folk and this is anti-white racism. But now we're getting back to the indoctrination. Why exactly were they mentally unhealthy? What could have caused that? Was it perhaps gender ideology? Was it perhaps CRT, learning about things like terms? White privilege was used in the writings, so perhaps there's that, white privilege.
Investigating the leaks, that's why it was leaked to us. Source it because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So, and we called, by the way, this exact backlash on the
You're now not only giving a lot of clues as to where the source could be located, but also the intentions and motivations of the source. Straight up. And now you're just quoting the source. Again, this is information that has not been fucking tortured out of you or really deeply questioned. You'll just be like, so I just want to do a quote by the mayor here. And it's like, yeah, and also the source said this. And then after the source said that, they were wearing this colored shirt. And then the source went back to work as a detective. Reflective, or it rhymes with that anyways. Yes.
On the program, we said, this is how we expect the media to cover it. There will be some attack the messenger. There will be some people, the clickbait farms out there. And I know that you're an actual journalist, so it must aggravate you as much as anyone else. It's like Ben Affleck with Good Will Hunting. Like, toss my name on there as well. We did the legwork, and that's because these people feel as though, well, not feel. Their voice is not heard. The truth has not been covered. And it was a necessity to them.
I'm glad that you brought this up, because as journalists, we want the entire manifesto released. We want that so we can examine it for context. We can use experts to evaluate this. You have only released 3 pages, and I'm wondering if you think that's irresponsible.
Why would that be irresponsible?
Because there isn't a context to it.
Well, I think it's irresponsible.
Yeah. By the way, not only has he only released 3 pages, he's advertised with links to his sites that he's going to release more. Yeah. Again, the whole thing is content farming. It's like some of the most disgusting and depraved content farming you could possibly do. Ghoulishness of the highest level, to which the actual families have said, please don't do this. And still, it's like, why would that be irresponsible? No, you don't get it. Because like, if I trickle release, line go up, more people tune in Rumble, Mug Club get like more purchased. It like do you not more money. It's for money. I get more money if I do it that way.
How long has it been since this shooting?
Roughly at what, 8 to 9 months?
Yeah, somewhere between, yeah, I think it's late 7, call it 8 months. Okay. Who's been involved in this investigation? I mean, not only the PD, right, but you have the FBI involved. These people saying that it's, this information should not get out there. They want this suppressed. But they haven't been able to name any other people of interest with their investigation. And the American public has seen nothing. We know more about the Christchurch shooting, which, by the way, if you look at that manifesto, it was troll.
Again, what are you implying here? That there was other people involved, that there's other people at large, that there's co-conspirators, co-shooters, co-planners? Is that what you're saying? There's absolutely no evidence whatever to suggest that, including within the own evidence that you have presented so far that disproved all the conspiracy theories that you were touting for fucking months. But go on. What else do you have, Crowder?
I don't know if you know this, not a lot of white supremacists are actually watching Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro. A lot of it was clearly meant to be if not, I shouldn't even say satire. It was just meant to be dishonest, and that was covered. In this case, this is authentic. This is someone who was deranged. This is someone who was...
Sorry, what that one was just so outrageous. It kind of just flew under the radar. But wait, are you suggesting that white supremacists don't like white supremacist rhetoric coming out of other individuals if they happen to be black or Jewish? Is that it? Or if other individuals are saying things that uphold white supremacy, they won't listen to those individuals in question? Is that it?
Steeped their entire life, it seems, in the modern progressive ideology. You don't use the term white privilege. Unironically, before you commit a mass shooting, crackers, if you look at the language that's being used, of course, they were misspelled, which also is a terrible indictment of our public education system. What
about the F slur? The F slur is used more than the C word. They said the F slur way more times. What about that? What does that imply? Again, it kind of seems as if the police were correct when they stated that this was less of a manifesto and more of, again, journalistic entries in which they cannot pinpoint a coherent political ideology that would point towards and implicate why perhaps someone was committing this atrocity.
At least what it is that we have. I sincerely don't believe for a second, and I don't think that you do, that any of this would have ever been released if not for what took place today. I hope if they have more and there's more context, great. I want to. Our job here is done. I hope that there's more transparency, that there is more truth. If there's 20 pages that would show that this clearly was someone who was another right-wing extremist, a white supremacist, if that would be the case, hey, I will gladly go out and condemn it wholeheartedly, as I condemn any shooting. Because
wait, you're not just going to condemn it just outright? No one is on team mass shooter, Stephen. What are you doing?
It's not very hard for me to condemn white supremacy, and this is something that we've talked about. White supremacists are assholes. I'm assuming that.
Not very hard. You seem to struggle with a lot. Why do you make segments on it all the time where you're like, what even is a white supremacist? Is this a white supremacist? Is this? Is that? What? The word has no meaning. No meaning anymore.
You can obviously censor this. I have no problem saying, can't stand white supremacists. These people are morons. They're basically just socialists who believe that socialism would work if you did it with people who have less melanin in their skin. I assume.
See, well, that's why everyone knows that you're a white supremacist, Stephen, because you don't even know what white supremacy is.
Associate with them, zero. It's a lot harder for the mayor. It's a lot harder for the leftist media, for those people who would be involved in the legacy media. It's a lot harder for public educators to say, absolutely, I have nothing in common with gender ideology and, for example, the idea of checking white privilege. But they can't.
Ooh, see? Here we go. Go back. See, again, you're a conspiracy theorist and a bigot and a white supremacist, by the way. All those things wrapped into one. And that's why you're trying so hard right now. We can't release the manifesto that I definitely have every single page of. It's not a manifesto, as the police have said. It's a journal entry. But still, I'm going to call it the manifesto. And I'm going to release certain pages at a time to be able to generate views, content, and clicks for money. And at the same time, use these opportunities to say, well, now we know. This is it. This is why no one was able to release it. It's right here, clear as day. This person hated white people. It was a self-hating white person. That's what it is.
They can't separate themselves from that because that's something that they regurgitated ad hominem. They did it when the shooting took place.
I can't believe he's keeping a straight face. Well, I mean, like, what are you supposed to do? You're not going to, you're not here for a debate. You're here to find out information. And to be honest, this is a treasure trove. If you happen to be an NBC reporter, someone is just being like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I can never reveal my sources. No, I understand. Yes, I understand the code of ethics for journalists. Sure. Anyways, can I talk to you about my sources and all the things that my sources said and the things that my sources do and where my sources work and what my sources want to say and why my sources may have done this and why my sources related this to me? Sure, go on. Keep going. Tell me more.
Tripping over themselves to ensure the proper use of pronouns. I don't believe for a second that the media was ever going to actually do some digging and try to get to the truth of this. They had 8 months.
So, I'm not going to stand on my pulpit and argue about what we, have been able to do and haven't been able to, but I have made it clear that, as journalists, we have wanted this and we've asked for it and we've gone to court to try and get it. But we have our own, reasons for wanting to inform the public in our way. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously.
And what would those reasons be?
For my reasons would be for full transparency, for a greater understanding and given with context about who this person was and why this person did it. But I will also say that we have heard repeatedly that this was a person that was so mentally ill that there may not be any understanding of why she did what she did because she was so mentally ill. But I don't have the entire conflict. I don't have.
So what is the truth of this? And why not focus on the other shooting? Because the person was trans. The person was trans. It is, again, if you look at the statistics, it would be yet another white male shooter. Because this was a trans man, Steven Crowder and the rest of these people feel like this is like a win for their side or a win for their team, or this is some kind of team sports, right? I even saw people in the replies when I'm like, holy fuck, Crowder just revealed that he has pages of a manifesto of the Nashville shooter. Those pages, which he's now saying are like valid and prove his point, directly refute the conspiracy theories that the person was doing what they were doing because they were trans. Directly refutes that. Now they're saying that it's anti-white, even though they use the F slur, so you could say that it was anti-LGBTQ as well. But yeah, none of that matters to them. They all just fucking, again, flip out. Oh, well, no, this is not trans ideology. Well, now he's actually putting that one back in. That one is making a fucking a rebound now. But now it's definitely because of terms like white privilege. You wouldn't use the term white privilege. You wouldn't use the C slur. You wouldn't use the C slur unless you hated white people. And then so this is definitely an attack by someone who has been perhaps indoctrinated by things like the things we hate, CRT, trans ideology, or anything else they want to talk about. But it's because again, it's a team sports thing to them. And people in the replies who were saying to me, he's like, this looks bad on your side still, Lance. Oh, my side? I'm not, no one should be on the side of mass shooters. No one should be on the side of people who murder children. Honestly, this person was a monster. It doesn't matter if they're cis or trans. That just speaks for itself. You all now want to use this because you hate trans people openly and proudly to try and say that this is indicative of something to do with being trans, when that is absurd. All the evidence would point to the contrary, that you're actually statistically less likely to become or be a mass shooter if you are trans than if you are cis. Now, is every mass shooting, the vast majority of them committed by cis people, indicative that they are mass shooters because they are cis? I don't see evidence of that. I see a lot of evidence of a lot of other factors. There seems to be a lot of other things at play that simply correlates a lot of mass shootings and mass shooters with each other. We could point towards that and have that discussion. You probably won't enjoy it. It's not going to be doing great for your team when it comes to that. But no one's on the side of mass shooters. No one is team mass shooter.
All of her writing.
I noticed you say she. Why do you say she?
Well, I will say she because I have interviewed her attorney for the family, and the family refers to her as she. And although she identified as transgender, she's not here to basically describe for herself what she preferred to be. So at this point, I am going with what the family and how they described her.
Damn.
But we're also.
But why? Let me ask this: why are we taking?
That's fucking gross, NBC. You should be disgusted by yourselves.
The family's word for it, right? Because this person was, I believe, 28 years old. Right, Aiden is how they last referred to themselves. Right, they were becoming a male when they committed the shooting. They identified as a male. This family,
that's right,
has not seen the man. Handed it over to the authorities.
Has not seen them. According to the family, they have not seen the manifesto.
So when the shooting happened, right, it was a game of walking backwards with landmines, where people were being condemned for using the wrong pronouns. Now, I'm not pulling a gotcha with you. I'm saying that happened with everyone out there when they were covering this. And now people are saying, well, the authority would be the family or the lawyer. The family couldn't know. Why is the family an authoritative source?
The authority would be the person, because people can tell you what their pronouns are. And if people don't want to believe them, or people don't want to listen to them, or people don't want to respect the use of pronouns, that's a you problem. That's on you. That's your issue.
They handed it over to the police department, who, by the way, have refused to give anything to the public.
They're talking fast because I have it on 125, just because so much of this is just Crowder fucking, just doing the same shit in circles.
Look, this is one of those issues, right, where you go, okay, if you want to get to the truth and you are stonewalled by those in positions of power, all we're left with is a couple of days of the shooting, people being attacked for using the wrong pronouns, and then moving on because it's not a convenient tool to use for gun control.
Yeah, I think that, all we can do as journalists is lay it out as the truth, as in terms of what her gender was when she was born and what she preferred to use as she became an adult. And I think that's how we kind of, frame it, at least for our purposes, at least reporting it hopefully is that. I do want to ask you, obviously you identify as a conservative.
Sure.
And you will have your critics that will say, okay, you've got an agenda in all this. So what's your end game?
Yeah, I'm not unbiased. just to be clear. I'm not at all. And I don't pretend to be. You know, what we do is largely entertainment. It was a late night show that we realized people were watching more in the morning, so we moved it to morning. It's late night in the morning. We do have an investigative journalism unit because it's largely dead.
But that doesn't answer the question as to why he only released part of it. Well, the answer is disgusting. It's content. It's money. That's the answer. Crowder's never going to say that out loud.
And most people out there aren't doing it.
Like, everything Crowder's saying, that like, oh, I'm doing this because it's in the public interest and the families have a right to know. He didn't give it to the families. He didn't hand it over to the families. He's only selectively releasing pages every now and then to build a narrative around it because it's content. All of it.
This is proof positive that's not being
done.
done.
Again, when you look at that news article, the families themselves specifically said they didn't want the manifesto released to the public.
And it's unfortunate because, for example, if we were to go back, Watergate, I just say that because it's ubiquitous, right? People, everything's become a gate now. Zippergate, Watergate, Cigargate, anything. They toss a gate and they're like, that's a great headline. You couldn't do that today. You couldn't do that today. Why not? Because we have these laws in the country to protect investigative journalists, also to protect free speech, that involve, for example, being single-party consent states. Which mean that if, and you know this is remedial, but for people out there who may not, if you're a journalist and you're trying to catch someone in the act of something corrupt, let's say like Watergate, you can record it. You have that right. The problem is most of the information out there today, and this is something that journalists run up against. Facebook, right, Meta, YouTube, Alphabet, a handful of companies control the flow of all information. And they don't even follow the laws. They enjoy the protection of Section 230. They're treated as though they are open platforms. But you can record something entirely legally. And YouTube says, oh, that person doesn't want to be out there, so then they remove it. How are you ever supposed to expose corruption? We've sat down and done interviews. We've done Change My Minds where people sit down, sign a release, and on camera spell their name, say, I consent to this interview. Later on, didn't like how they were portrayed, and we had to either blur their face or remove the video entirely. That's what's worrisome to me. And I wonder.
That's not how fucking consent forms work in media, Stephen. You're lying or you don't understand. One of the two.
I wonder if that's why no one did the digging that needed to be done for this story. If it's because going up.
If people, by the way, sign and a consent and release form and it's, properly worded and extensive, they don't get to do that. Like Steven Crowder most likely is filming people on the street without their consent whatsoever. And then afterwards publishing those videos. And then those people rightfully are asking for them to be blurred out or taken down because they can. You don't have a right to simply just do that and then profit from it.
Against these big tech giants, it's really a tripopoly, is just something that seems like an insurmountable task. But we shouldn't have gotten to this first. It's bittersweet. To me, we have an investigative journalism unit because people out there aren't doing it. Because largely, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I will say, but we do agree on that too. And I just
no one's done it, and it was never going to happen. We released what we had, and I hope that everything is released.
But we do agree on that too. And I
hope everything is released because I sure as hell won't be doing it. I sure as hell won't be doing that. I'm going to keep milking every single page until I can get all the clicks and all the views and all the mugs can get sold.
Really appreciate, Stephen, you doing this for me and doing it for everybody else in telling this part of the story because it isn't.
Wow, this is fucking disgusting, by the way. This dude, it's gross. This is NBC Nashville. Damn. Who's just straight up being like, well, I mean, I know that this individual had preferred pronouns, but they're dead now, so I'm going to go with what, other people are saying. That's basically, I'm going to report on it. And yeah, I think we should have the manifesto released and all that kind of shit. Gross, NBC Nashville. All right, I'm just going to grab a soda and we'll move on to the Beanie Dome. The time has come to learn about cranial skull measuring and beanies.
We stand with Israel.
By the way, if you don't already, you should support the Breach Media. They produce amazing and excellent videos. Here's a link to the one that you're going to be watching, a wee bit of it. The Breach is fucking awesome and base. They're basically doing like more perfect union, but out of old Canada.
We stand by Israel. Canada stands with Israel.
As Israel pulverizes Palestinians in Gaza, it's more clear than ever. Canada has become one of Israel's most extreme supporters. They sell Israel weapons, they back them at the UN, they offer them special trade access, they even serenade their leaders. Someone obviously didn't tell Stephen Harper what Jude means in German. So what explains this relationship?
The relationship between Israel and Canada are more than friendship.
I like it. That's right. In 2005, Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin put it this way: Israel's values are Canada's values. They are indeed the values of settler colonial states. Both cleared the land of indigenous peoples to make room for settlers. Both impose and entrench that land theft with police or military violence. Both sign one-sided treaties to normalize this inequality on the ground. And both offer tearful apologies, but won't stop committing their crimes. While like recognizes like, the policies of Israel and Canada are fundamentally shaped by a far greater superpower, the United States of America. Since Israel's foundation, Canada has assisted U.S. interests in the Middle East, backing a strong client state to help control the region's oil and keep Arab nationalism in check. During the deliberations over the partition of Palestine, Canadian diplomats took the American lead. We will have nothing to say until after the United States has spoken. In the 1950s, the U.S. wanted to sell fighter jets to Israel, but were worried
Gnosis, thank you. Almost a year, uwu, indeed.
About their support being visible, so Canada sold it for them instead.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Canadian Air Force proudly presents
Over the following decades, Canada voted so often with Israel and America at the UN that it developed a reputation as their second BFF. In some cases, Canada outdid even the US. By the 1980s, most of the world had recognized the PLO as the Palestinians' official representatives at the UN. When US President Ronald Reagan indicated that they too would open contact, Ottawa refused, making them the last country apart from Israel to formally deal with the PLO. In 1993, the US, with Canada by its side, presented themselves as peace brokers, helping ink the Oslo Peace Accords. But the so-called peace process wasn't intended to create an independent Palestinian state. It was intended to create, as former Israeli Foreign Minister Shlomo Ben-Ami acknowledged, a permanent neo-colonialist dependency. Back at home, Canada's spy agency targeted Palestinian activists who opposed this development. Canada began pouring tens of millions into a corrupt Palestinian
Canada, the 51st state with healthcare. Yeah.
Authority, who managed the occupation on Israel's behalf. With Canadian and US backing, a Palestinian security force, more accountable to Israel than its own people, would soon crack down on dissent. They also inked a free trade agreement that recognized Palestinian territory as de facto part of Israel. Billions in trade ensued. Canadian companies built the Israeli Air Force's communication system and components for bombers and helicopters, unmanned drones and maritime patrol aircraft, surveillance systems, and body armor. They've even helped build the highways used by Israeli settlers that are off limits to Palestinians, creating what Israeli human rights group B'Tselem calls a regime of apartheid. Under conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Canada started outdoing the US once again in their extreme support for Israel.
Given a warm welcome at the Knesset, even given the key to Israel's parliament.
And when Palestinians in Gaza voted for Hamas in fair and free elections in 2006, Canada became the first country in the world to cut off aid to the Palestinian Authority, to teach them a lesson for doing democracy the wrong way. Canada's votes at the UN by this point were so one-sided that even
a chemical plant has exploded in Texas. That's not good. Oh my. That's a very big amount of chemicals. At this time, the effects of the chemicals in the air are unknown. Livingston Police Department similarly urges residents and businesses to shelter in place and turn off air conditioning systems in Texas. Wow. That's a very big explosion. Everybody, if you want to support the Breach Media, and you should, they're awesome. Go give them all of the subs. Here you are. Here is some links. There you go. Go subscribe to the Beanie Dome.
The hubris and the arrogance, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. In this video that's going viral, you've got one of these studies they do or whatever. They bring 6 people in a room and they say, rank everybody you think based on intelligence. And this woman's like, I'm number 2 because I have a PhD and I make COVID vaccines. And then turns out to be, I'm not gonna bury the lead, the stupidest among the bunch. Okay, but to be fair, I don't think IQ, I think the mistake this woman made is that the assumption that IQ means anything about success. Let me play for you this clip. Let's talk about the epic embarrassment, but I'll cut her some slack. Here we go.
I'm 21, I'm a high school graduate, and I work in the Marine Corps.
I'm 30 years old. I have my PhD in cancer biology, and I work in a biotech industry. Grad school, I went to University of South Carolina, and undergrad, I went to University of Florida. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, let's pause here. This is what they're doing. Before the IQ test, they're asking this woman with her PhD to rank everyone on who she thinks the smartest is.
Wait, sorry, and then they're going to determine intelligence based on IQ. like IQ has been pretty thoroughly debunked right now as a measure for all intelligence. You understand that. IQ is good for measuring how good you are at a specific standardized testing. There's that. But why do you keep saying intelligence?
Guy on the left looks like, I don't know, what is like an Asian guy? She said 1. She says for herself 2. For this woman on the far right, 3. For this individual here, I can't tell if it's a boy or a man or a woman. 4. This woman 5. And then this guy in the jacket, she says 6. Okay, so that's what they're doing. They're breaking this down. Let's play more.
2, me, I don't know. PhD, cancer biology scientist. I work in a biotech company. We make COVID-19 testing kits, stuff like that.
She does a thing like, you know, we make COVID-19.
I can already tell why he's so excited about this. And then it's going to reveal that the person with the PhD and the one who actually works making COVID testing kits has a low IQ because she's dumb. Yeah.
Testing kits. Okay, so not vaccines. Testing kits and, you know, and all that, like PhD. Okay, oof. The arrogance. It feels so good.
And then
it feels so
it has
good.
nothing to do with your background. I don't think you really have the highest EQ out of all of us. Tyler, he ranked last for me personally because the way he carries himself. He was...
Hey, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to fucking defend someone who's actually trying to use IQ as like a generalized intelligence fucking measure for everybody and being like, I believe that person's going to have a low IQ. That person's going to have a high IQ. That person's going to have no IQ. That person's going to be negative IQ. And that person, well, they're over 9,000. Like, come on. IQ tests, what they test is how good you are at taking IQ tests. Yes. And I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of generalized questions in IQ tests that are difficult, and your ability to answer questions rapidly so that you have very fast computational skills and you can do things like that quickly. Yes, that can denote that you have a specific set of skills in a specific field or area. You may be really, really good at that. You might be terrible at that. That doesn't mean that suddenly you're not an intelligent person, or you might not have intelligence in other fields or categories.
ranking intelligence based on his point of view and not taking in other people's point of views.
So number 1 is Raymond.
So
number
sure
2
enough.
would be Kaylee. Number 3 will be Tyler. And number 4 would be Shada. Number 5 is Sean. And number 6 is Maria.
I like the music too. Oh my God. 131, 131, 133.
Sure enough, this guy, IQ test ranking 131, putting him in 3rd place. Hey, this lady was correct. The guy, you can't really see his shoulder. You can only see his shoulder, but it looks like he was the smart.
He's just focusing on this one person. Well, because that one person claims to be a liberal elitist PhD, you know, and then she thinks like vaccines are good or something like that. Turns out she's the dum-dum of the group.
Artist. And then the woman who thought she was second smartest is in fact...
Oh, look at that. Look at that. By the way, I've often said this because the right doesn't really seem to accept this premise, right? If you have individuals, say like a Sam Harris or James Lindsay, individuals who have PhDs, for example, one in mathematics, right? And one in, I believe, neurobiology or perhaps neurosurgery. In both cases, incredibly high levels of study, skill, and you could say knowledge on a specific topic. You have to spend years and years and years dedicating yourself to that topic. That doesn't mean they have a generalized intelligence or the ability to speak on all subjects. That's why you can have a person like Sam Harris, who's actually one of the people who actually pushed Charles Murray back into the forefront, where everyone else was like, we're just leaving this kind of racist drivel to die where it belongs. He's like, no, you don't understand. He was just reporting on data, you see. It's just raw numbers. It's a total travesty that Charles Murray isn't the intellectual god that he is. We need to bring him back. Everyone needs to understand about race and IQ. And then everyone's like, again, can you look towards other people who saw right through this years ago, fucking like in the 70s, like Stephen Jay Gould, who was like, by the way, what this is measuring and what you're seeing, if you have data that's showing that there are lower intelligence ratios of IQ, intelligence quotients for people in these areas, has a lot to do with their access to education, their ability to take intelligence quotient exams. That's what this is showing you. If you're like, hey, by the way, it shows that a lot of people in poor communities of black people suddenly are performing very low on these tests, but they also have way lower rates of education, way higher rates of poverty, way lower rates of people who have access to tutors, people who can actually prepare you and help you prepare for standardized testing of this kind of nature. That's what this is demonstrating. Not that the races, because there's no such thing, have a certain level of fucking intelligence over other races. That's just the fucking racist skull measuring eugenics fucking phrenology shit, right? I'm a computer science major. There are programs without any formal education at all, but they are amazing at it. The difference between a college education and self-education on a program is often down to knowing what happens on the back and how code actually works. IQ is basically worthless to determine how good someone is at something, let alone what aspect of that thing they know. Well, it is good to determine whether or not they're good at IQ tests. That can show you.
The stupidest among the bunch. A midwit, as it were. 112. There you go. Group ranking. She was dead wrong. She thought this guy was the stupidest, but in fact, it was her. Now, what does this mean, my friends? What does this mean? I want to go back to the point where she does that stupid little dance.
3, 4, 5, 6. 2, me.
This means you get to laugh at people you don't like. That's what this means. And then you get to use a little bit of skull measuring along the way to be like, yeah, not only do I get to laugh at the fucking liberal elitist fucking pro-vaccine, I also get to say that they're a dum-dum. Yeah, that's what this means.
PhD, cancer biology scientist. I work in a biotech company. We make COVID-19 tests.
She does this thing where she's like, and she swings her arm like she's so confident in herself. I'm going to cut her some slack, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to cut her some slack. IQ, what does it mean? Seriously, what does it mean? Who is the smartest man in the world? Who has the highest IQ? Do you know who it is even? And does this person do anything in terms of running companies or inventing vaccines or rocket science? Yeah, I don't think so. And I mean no disrespect to people with high IQs. That's certainly not it. I would not go ahead and assume.
Wait, are you not gonna finish that thought? I thought you were about to reveal a name, and I'd be like, okay, interesting. I wanted to look up on this person or something like that. No, it's just random thoughts coming to your beanie, and then okay, all right, fun.
That I have a higher IQ than any of these individuals. I honestly have no idea. I would assume that it's probably true or whatever, but we first must understand what IQ is. Does IQ mean that you are smarter? Technically, yes. The intelligence quotient, there are a bunch of different factors in how they determine your IQ. And the reason why this young woman may have thought that she was actually smarter than everyone has nothing to do with whether she actually is. It's because she jumped through hoops.
Technically, yes. But what do you have to say about the smartest person in the world? What's the highest IQ that there is? And what do? Are they someone who's a champion of industry? Are they someone who cares about vaccination? I have another thought. I'd like to talk about something completely unrelated.
But, fair point. If this guy, who she thought was the stupidest, is actually smarter than her, well, hold on. Let's slow down. She said it's not because of his background. His background, let's go back to the beginning. We'll hear his background again.
I'm 21. I'm a high school graduate, and I work in the Marine Corps.
I'm 30.
He works in the Marine Corps. He's not a PhD scientist or anything like that. So, him having a higher IQ doesn't actually mean a whole lot. You can have great spatial reasoning, like you're really good at in your head moving blocks around. One of the things they do on IQ tests is they'll show you a cube that is opened up and sprawled out with a bunch of symbols on it. They'll then ask you, basically, I don't know if they still do this, but then in your mind, you have to fold the cube back up and then list where the objects are in relation to each other. There are also other pattern recognition tests, which I'm sure many of you have seen.
The English statistician Francis Galton made the first attempt at creating a standardized test for rating a person's intelligence. A pioneer of psychometrics and the application of statistical methods to study human diversity and the study of inheritance of human traits, he believed that intelligence was largely a product of hereditary, which did not mean genes, though he did develop several pre-Mendelian theories about particular inheritance. He hypothesized that there should exist a correlation between intelligence and other observable traits, such as reflexes, muscle grip, and head size. He then set up the first mental testing center in the world in 1882, and he published the Inquiries into the Human Faculty and Development in 1883, in which he set out his theories. After gathering data on a variety of physical variables, he was able to show that any such correlation, he eventually abandoned his research. French psychologist Alfred Binet, together with Victor Henry and Theodore Simon, had more success in 1905 when they published the Binet-Simon test, which focused on verbal abilities. It was intended to identify, and then there's the arsehole in there, in school children, but specific contradictions to claims made by psychiatrists that children were, quote, sick, not slow, should therefore be removed from school and cared for foreign asylums. The score on the B'nai Simon scale would reveal the child's mental age. For example, the 6-year-old child who passed all the tests usually passed by 6-year-olds, but nothing beyond. Then that would have a mental age that matches chronological age 6.0. B'nai thought intelligence was multifaceted, but came under the control of the practical judgment. In B'nai's view, there were limitations with the scale, and he stressed what he saw was remarkable diversity in intelligence and subsequent need to study it as a qualitative as opposed to quantitative measure. American psychologist Henry Goddard published a translation of it in 1910. American psychologist Lewis Terman of Stanford revisited the B'nai Simon scale, which resulted in the Stanford B'nai Intelligence Scales in 1916. It became the most popular test in the United States for decades. It was also very heavily involved in the eugenics movement in the United States, if you want to look into the full history of it. Someone who does really good history of intelligence IQ would be Sean. I would go watch Sean's video. It's quite long. It's certainly one of those 3-hour videos with a lot of information. For myself, I had to do that, let's ingest 40 minutes here, let's ingest 40 minutes there, and then eventually get through it. But it is, and his follow-up to it as well, for all the criticisms that he received for making it, is a wonderful exploration about the history and the practicality of trying to use IQ for measuring people's general intelligence.
Where you'll see like a box with a dot in it, and then like a triangle with a slash through it, and then a circle with like a square in the middle. And then it'll show you like 3 of these and ask you which is the next symbol in the sequence. Now, I'm sorry, but if you ace that test, what does it really mean? Does it mean that you're going to better understand politics? Does it mean that you're going to be better at making COVID-19 testing kits? I got to be honest, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Probably one of the most important things is not, say, pattern recognition or mathematical ability, although they're important for a variety of reasons. I think the issue with IQ is the assumption that the general number just means smarter or stupider. I mean, sort of. It's talking about your general intelligence in a variety of...
Wait, how do you keep doing this? How are you like, well, it is incredibly complex and difficult for us to actually measure something and quantify something, such as what do we consider something to be generalized intelligence? For example, someone can have a lot of abilities in the ability to interpret literature and the ability to disseminate literature, read tons of literature, and then be able to tell you a lot of what that literature is about and meaning. But would that then be applicable in a standardized testing in which you have to recognize shape patterns and recognition, or be able to do complex algebra, stuff like that? Are the two equatable? Where do we exactly position ourselves in terms of what is intelligence or generalized intelligence? And again, if you happen to have a person who is a PhD student, why do we automatically assume that they happen to be incredibly intelligent in all things? They can be incredibly well-versed and knowledgeable on a singular topic, as they probably should be, by the way, if they're going to be practicing medicine. You want that, and you want to have standardization, and you want to have boards that actually license people who actually know what they're doing, so you won't have malpractice, or you won't have people randomly dying because that person doesn't know enough about the very thing that they're about to operate on. That has a lot of purpose, use, and utility. But in order to be like, hey, some people are smart and some people aren't, and here's how we measure it based on a single number, similar to Dragon Ball Z. Let's Dragon Ball Z this whole thing, where everybody has a power level, and then you can see that power level like visually in front of you, and then some people have high ones, low ones.
The fields, and then form a quotient based on the scores you get in all of these. I think I did one a really, really long time ago, and I have like a really, really good spatial, and I'm like really bad in other areas. Look, why is a person successful?
It's over 9.
And what does it matter if they're smart or stupid? And I mean that sincerely. Do we as a society determine that someone is more deserving of human rights or better because they may be smarter?
Well, that's what eugenicists did.
What does it mean then to be smarter? What if someone is not really good at math at all? But
utilizing IQ
really
as justification
good,
for
really good at remembering things. And so because of this, with excellent recall, they can actually put pieces together and better
You know what's shocking is the point that he's making right now kind of just refutes the joy that he's taking from this video, because this video joy is based on the premise that this person probably thinks they're intelligent but isn't because they have very low IQ scores. But then afterwards he's now saying, he's like, by the way, I mean, at the end of the day, how do we even know really what is, intelligence or what is a highly intelligent person? That's very difficult to determine through singular standardized
really
tests.
Long division.
I can speak. My IQ's too high. I can't get words out.
I think the big problem here is her arrogance, where she thinks she's number 2.
Or too low.
The first thing I would say is if I was ever put in a room with a group of people, this is why these tests don't work. If you put me in a room with a group of people and said, Tim, I want you to rank everyone by intelligence, I'd be like, okay, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I'm probably the dumbest person in the room because I'm not going to be stupid enough. Actually, to my credit, it probably says that I'm smarter, that I'm willing to say I'm the stupidest person in the room because I'm not so stupid that I would then assume I'm smarter than everybody else. In fact, I'd probably assume.
By the way, what really should be the takeaway from all this is, why does this all matter so much to people? Again, you can have individuals who think that they are just the most intelligent people on the face of the planet. They're unwilling to even tell you that they're actually, you know, not as clever as they think they may be. But why? Why is it that we suddenly rank people as if there's a score and a power level that is associated directly with something and your ability to perform in a standardized test? And why are people who might not score as high seen as lesser than? Why do we even diminish people if they're considered to be less intelligent? You know, sometimes people can just be less informed. Sometimes people can simply not know enough about a topic before they speak about it or something like that. Again, why is it that well, we have to get down to what exactly is the inheritable levels of intelligence, because we have to agree some people don't inherit the super brains, right? So those people, those are the undesirables.
Hey, probably smarter than me. But you may ask, but Tim, you run this big company. You talk so quickly. Certainly you must be smart. Perhaps, but I don't know. My IQ might be comparable to hers, 112. Who knows? I don't really know or care.
But no, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if your IQ's fucking 90. That doesn't matter.
I don't think I'm the smartest person ever. I do remember things well. I actually am pretty good at math, so that analogy wasn't really about me. The issue, I think, is...
Oh man, I was sitting here for a second and I was almost like, oh, it's wild, but I think he's actually almost getting to the correct take on this one. Nope. Wrong.
It is actually...
the beanie trumps all.
Probably stupider to judge someone based on their IQ. Now, the mistake she makes in this video, dude, don't judge a guy how he carries himself by saying he has a low IQ. But more importantly, to everybody who's watching this video and they're like making fun of this woman, I think the funny thing is...
That's you. That was the entire first half of this video. You spent the whole thing being like, I don't want to give it away, but this is really funny. Yeah, she thinks she's smart, but she's not smart. It's fucking hilarious. Wait till you see this fucking rich PhD liberal elitist.
It's not so good reflect upon you. Yeah, I'm saying, because, look, it's an out of...
What are you saying? Why did you go all fucking Jersey out of nowhere?
Context clip. She may have said a bunch of things. She looked at this guy and says, I think you probably have a low IQ. She's not saying he's stupid. And now we don't know. I don't know for sure. I always try to be careful, because for all I know, a video comes out where she's actually really nice. And she says something like, I really respect you serving in the Marine Corps. I think it's really admirable. It's really awesome. I don't say this in a disrespectful way, but I would assume your IQ is probably lower. That is not to insult you. Some people have higher IQs than other people. It's totally fine. I would assume I'd have an higher IQ because of the work I do in biotech. And that's a fair thing to say. I mean, come on. If they put you in a room with a guy who's like, I'm a high school graduate, I'm in the Marine Corps, and then you right now, any one of you, what's the likelihood you would just say, that guy's got a higher IQ than me? I mean, it's a silly notion. It doesn't mean you intend to disrespect them by saying they do or don't have a high IQ. This is the issue I take with videos like this. I have tremendous respect for stupid people who do good work. Forrest Gump, come on, look at that story. A guy was dumb as a box of rocks. Yet he did amazing things. He helped people, and it's kind of sad that he's really dumb, but he's a good dude. That's the story, right? There are a lot of people in this world.
Again, I don't get why you keep having to apply things like dumb, bad, or something. I am definitely dumb on a lot of topics. I'm definitely dumb on a lot of things, you know, and that's okay. That's human. But some people know a lot about things. Some people know nothing about things. Some people know a fuck ton about things and certain topics. I'm good in some fields, bad in others. Bad at math. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being, you know, dumb at all.
Who do some of the most important work. I don't know about her and whatever biotech stuff is. I don't really care. My point is, the end-all be-all of a person's worth, capabilities, and success is not IQ.
Does he think Forrest Gump was a documentary? Maybe. I don't know.
There are people who play Olympic athletes, the best in the world, and they're worth millions of dollars. Why? They have maxed out their strength stat and their dexterity, but their intelligence and their wisdom is very low. It doesn't mean they're good or bad people. It doesn't mean they're successful or failures. Out of everything that we've tracked as humans in the studies, to determine success, there's only one factor that matters, and it is perseverance. You could be terrible at math. You could be completely illiterate, but you might write the most beautiful song ever written. And so your dexterity and your musical capabilities, your creativity are through the roof. Your IQ test is going to be abysmal. This lady, she gets 112. Oh, she's so embarrassed. Well, she should be, not because her IQ score is low. She should be embarrassed by being embarrassed. She should be like, wow, I didn't realize. Perhaps the issue is more so that I have more perseverance than some of these other individuals. Perhaps she could have said something like, you're 21 and you're in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I know. He just blew up his original argument.
I personally think being in the Marine Corps
that's the brilliant thing about, you know, fucking Tim Pool's reporting. He doesn't actually have an argument or a coherent narrative. He just gets to say a lot of different things at a lot of different times that take multiple different political positions and stances at any given time. So he can't be held accountable for anything he really thinks and or believes. That's all part of the play, right?
Based AF, and I respect it. If her argument is she's doing more important work, I mean, first of all, the issue is she's older. I mean, it's silly. But which also plays a role in her IQ. Absolutely, because age is a factor. That's the other funny thing that people don't understand about this. It could simply be that her IQ is lower because she's older than everybody else. But anyway, I digress. Because I think like they divide by age. I don't know. You could simply say, and she should have said this, I work in all of these fields, not because I'm smarter than any one of you, but because of my perseverance and my willingness not to give up and to keep moving forward. Hence, I was able to achieve my PhD and work in a very tough field. You may be smarter, but do you have what it takes to grind your fingers to the bone in order to succeed? That's ultimately my point. Let's not rag on this lady. I don't know, whatever. But people want to feel good because they think she's being smug, and maybe she is. But ultimately, the only thing I expect from any one of you, you know, people ask me like, you know, do you think I'm stupid or whatever? And they assume that I don't have respect. No, man. I think everybody's got their specialties. Everyone's got the things that make them unique and powerful and potentially successful. But the one thing everyone's got to have, that's that perseverance. And that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I think no matter who you are, no matter what you do, whether you're strong, whether you're weak, whether you're smart, whether you're tall, whether you're short, so long as you have that perseverance and that willingness to never give up, that's what it's all about. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com.
Just persevere. That's it, everyone. Keep working, keep struggling, keep doing what you're doing. Make sure you just keep working at it. Pull yourself up from those bootstraps and do everything you got to do. Eventually, you will succeed. That's all you got to know. That's it. I think in this case, he can have an argument because he just got an IQ score not worth bragging about. Doesn't mean he still can't be smarter than you. Smarter than all of us, really. I mean, at the end of the day, it's what it all comes down to. Intelligence, radiant. Let's watch the full 3-hour video on the bell curve.
Or it could be an indirect, unintended effect of a different trait being
It's visually entertaining too.
Or some sort of genetic drift, as generations of different population groups are isolated enough from each other to develop in significantly different ways. Whatever the reason, though, there would have to be a reason. And we should expect a scientist attempting to argue for a substantial difference in ability between different groups to therefore maybe be interested in...
Everyone, you should finish this video on your own time. We don't have 2 hours and 40 minutes to cover every single part of it. So I'm going to have to sign off for the day. You're going to have to thank the mods because the mods are amazing. The mods in all the chats, from the Twitch chat to the YouTube chat to the Serfs TV chat. And know that I'm coming back tomorrow for more content. I also have a huge announcement, everybody. Next week, I am going to be interviewing the managing editor of GameSpot, of which I'm very, very excited. Timur Hussein. He recently put out a very, very good video with People Make Games, talking about how the gaming industry has been silent on the genocide of Palestinians. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. And I get to basically live intravenously through his success, because when I was a wee lad, I always wanted to work in video games in some capacity, wanted to work in video game magazines or for video game companies, but then it turned out I didn't have the IQ. Okay, I couldn't code. I was not very good at coding because my brain don't work that way, and so I had low IQ. I was really hyper intelligent in the field of literature and literature interpretation and creative writing, and then that does me nothing for the video games. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But you know, one day maybe I can have that super brain juice that they're selling on InfoWars, and that'll get my numbers over 9,000, and we'll do that. Yeah, not vicariously. I was right the first time. Intravenously, like a drug, you know, flowing through the veins. That's what I meant to say. Anyways, I love you all. You're valid. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Please have a wonderful rest of your day, and